Regular meeting of the City Council, August 5th, 2014, to order. Let the record state all members are present and accounted for. Did we have any reportable action out of closed session?
There's no reportable action taken, Mayor.
Okay, great. Tonight, the invocation, we have had members of the clergy that have been providing it for us based on recent Supreme Court action, but unfortunately, with vacation schedules, someone wasn't able to make it tonight, so I'm going to give the opportunity to Councilwoman McCullough.
You can choose to bow your head or not. In the name of the Father Almighty, I just lift up this meeting tonight, and I first of all ask that your Spirit be here to bless each and every one of us and guide us and lead us. We thank you for the opportunity to officiate over this meeting tonight, and for each and every one of the citizens that come forth. Give them ears to hear, eyes to see, and let them be guided by you in what they receive and what they reject. For all of our staff, Father, I thank you for giving them the opportunity to do all the work that they do and still be here tonight with smiling faces. Father, speak to each one of our hearts that we will take and remember to keep you first, and for the great losses we've had throughout the world, not just in our state with the different disasters. Father, I ask that you comfort those people that have had loved ones that's lost. Comfort the nations that are still at war with one another. And Father, guide us to make the decisions of your choice this night. In the precious name of the Lord Jesus Christ, amen.
All right, and the Pledge of Allegiance tonight on the agenda is to be led by Mayor Pro Tem Nick, but in the past we have had scouts come up and lead our Pledge of Allegiance. I do see a couple in the back, so if you're interested and you want to come up to the mic, we'd love to have you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Sorry to put you on the spot.
I would think that since he's a Life Scout and his partner, that they are prepared.
Okay. Maybe you can let us know what troop you're with.
I'm Noah Rodabaugh from Troop 628, and just please follow along.
Okay.
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us to the public comments portion of the agenda. At this time, members of the public may address the City Council regarding any items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. No action may be taken on items not listed on the agenda unless authorized by law. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person, an overall time limit of 30 minutes for the public comments portion of the agenda. Any person wishing to address the City Council on any matter, whether or not it appears on the agenda, is requested to complete a request to speak form available next to the exit sign, my left, your right. The completed form is to be submitted to the city clerk prior to the individual being heard by the City Council. Whenever possible, lengthy testimony should be presented to the City Council in writing with 8 copies and only pertinent points presented orally. Additionally, a request to register written comments form is available over on that same counter. Have we had any public requests or public comments on?
Marcia Rudolph.
Good evening, everyone. Number one thing, when you're praying, don't forget Israel, because they're in a world of hurt at this point. Help them to stay safe. Second thing, I was always told to correct in private, censure in private, and to compliment in public. So I've got a public comment to give you. It's interesting. I know all of you have been into this situation where you go to church or you go to a meeting or whatever, and you're kind of the contact person. I still am for the city. And there was a lady followed me after church, and after saying, "How are you?" and that kind of stuff, she said, "I wanted to tell you something about CR&R." And I haven't heard anything about CR&R since they officially took over the routes of waste management for the city. She lives in Foothill Ranch. She is very pleased, underlined the pleased part, because the prior hauler came at a time when they woke her up every time they came around, and the trucks, she thinks, were bigger than CR&R. So she is very grateful to CR&R for the extra, ranks that she gets on the delivery dates. She said they're very good, they do a good job, and they're quiet. So that's a praise for CR&R. Third thing, don't forget to look at your garden in front of your house, on the side, in the back, and get rid of all those standing pools of water. We don't want to have any more people having something that is given to them because they got a bite from something from one of the critters that was lurking around one of those pools. So make sure that you check for standing water. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right quick before you leave, there was a guy, scout, working on his Eagle Scout that he came into City Hall, and I had the honor to help him with that scout. And he commented on your vector control, and part of his report on the civic portion for his badge or his finalization was about the vector control, the things that you were telling him on mosquitoes. He was here that day. So your vector report that you give for going to that meeting is being heard by people.
Have we had any other public comments on non-agenda?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, great. That brings us to the consent calendar warrant register, item number 5. All matters listed under the warrant register are considered routine and will be enacted by one vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the City Council, the public, or staff request specific items be removed from the warrant register for separate action. Do we have any public comments on the warrant register?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Council members?
Mayor, I would like to pull 2 of the items that's on the consent calendar.
Okay.
Page 13.
Page 13.
Item number 31191 and item number 31191.
31.
And I will move the remaining of the items.
Any other requests to pull anything from the warrant register?
Move the remainder.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second?
Second. Motion and a second. Council members, cast your votes. That item passed unanimously, and now we'll go to those 2 specific items.
Both of these items are the same thing. It's the pressure wash village pond, and each one of them are $2,400, and I wanted to make sure they were noted of the cost factor there. And I will make a motion to move the item.
Okay, so noted. There's a motion to move
Second
those
that.
2. Motion and a second. So council members, cast your votes. That passed unanimously. That brings us to the consent calendar miscellaneous items numbers 6 through 16. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless members of the City Council, the public, or staff request specific items be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Do we have any
We've had no requests from the public.
no requests from the public? Council members, do you have any items 6 through 16 that you wish to pull?
Yes, I'd like to put agenda item 16, please.
Item 16 from Councilmember McCullough. Any others? I'll entertain a motion on the balance, though.
Move the remainder of the consent calendar.
Second that.
There's a motion and a second. Council members, cast your votes. You waiting on one more? Okay. And items 6 through 15 pass unanimously.
Agenda item 16, resolution establishing deposit for campaign signs posted in the public right-of-way, submitted by Deputy City Manager, Director of Management Services, and removed from the consent calendar by Councilmember McCullough.
Councilwoman McCullough.
Thank you, Mayor. I just, I've already contacted staff to get some clarity on some things that I felt was missing out of here, but there was something that I'd like to throw out. I'm not against the ordinance. There's a couple of things I like to take and make note and get some feedback from my fellow colleagues, or if any of the public. We have where we will put in a $250 deposit if you want to put any posters in the public right of way. And if there is any in compliance, it'll be $12.50 per sign per offense. Now, we have this for our citizens that are running for office in our city. But if you drive through our city on any election time, when there's elections, even on the county level or state level, you'll see signs throughout our city. And what I'm trying to understand is how can you get that in compliance, and if the person, the $250 fines deduction out of that $250 is $12.50 each time for each sign. If they deplete that $12.50, then they can deposit another $12.50. And if they deplete that, they cannot take and put any more signs out. But in the meantime, I'd like to know if there's been any kind of study done on how the cost factor, because $250 is a reasonable amount, but the cost factor on these signs, the signs that you take back in, and the people that do not live in our city, that do not comply, is it just to make the people that live here that are running comply when you let all the signs on the state, the region, and the county level? Now, when they have completed them the last time, they can still put these signs up. And everybody knows those signs are put out there, and mostly everybody knows the signs are put out there in the dumpster, and they're going to be there for about 5 days. So they just go get those signs and put them back out, and they've done this every election. So we got something here that it seems like it's good, but it has a lot of loopholes in it for people to drive a Big Mac truck through and a freight train. So nobody has explained it to me how we're going to seal up that hole, because our people are going to be running back and forth. It's probably going to wind up costing us more than $250 for them to run back and forth and enforce this. So if there's anybody can give me any information on, are the teeth sharp, or are we just gumming it?
Well, just I'll defer to the city clerk in a second. I think probably where it makes the most sense, because I know you've been doing a lot of research there. But in my opinion, we've been going through this process in the past, and so we'll be recouping some of the cost. But definitely with state and federal candidates, I think the city clerk
And county.
has already identified a process. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, the staff met to discuss the potential of outside candidates using our public right-of-way. And what we anticipate doing is when there is a candidate or a campaign or any other non-commercial speech using the right-of-way during an election cycle, is that I would be notified as the city clerk, and I would reach out to those campaigns and then provide them with a copy of the ordinance and explain to them that the use of the right-of-way is subject to this permit. The signs would be removed until such time as they comply with that. We don't anticipate any more than we have local candidates. We don't anticipate outside candidates, repeating to violate once they've been notified of the regulations. The registrar of voters, as well as the city clerks in Rancho Santa Margarita, Mission Viejo, and Irvine, will receive a complimentary copy of our ordinance and the process, and just ask that they inform their candidates of our requirements.
Mr. Mayor. On that same note, there's actually for-profit companies that actually post signs for candidates, statewide candidates, and propositions. And I'd like to make sure, then I'll help you with a list. There's a list of 3 or 4. If we could please send it to those businesses that will actually post signs for candidates and propositions.
That would be very helpful. Thank you. And then also, if you will recall, when this item was placed before you, the council also directed that after the election, we bring it back in January for a discussion of how this first implementation went. And so if there are any glaring problems or implementation problems, then the council could consider remedies to those at that time.
Mainly, I would like the tracking of staff time, the money that it costs us to do this way, so when it comes back, we can have a real clear look on that.
I think there is the expectation that would happen as part of the analysis.
Definitely the money portion, okay?
Yep.
I'll move the item.
Hold on one second. I guess we have one.
Yes, in the course of the discussion, we've had a request to speak from Bonnie Parco.
Okay.
Allowing me to speak here tonight. I have a very simple request. To me, it's very simple. On March the 5th, my husband assaulted me in the city of Lake Forest. Now, I called for the sheriff. I finally got to the telephone and I called the sheriff. And they sent somebody out. Before they sent somebody out, he asked me what I was doing. I said, well, I'm calling 911. And in the process, he began laughing. He thought that was very funny. And I was to find out why that was funny, because he herded me into the garage, locked me out of the house, of which he owns the house, but we were married. And in the process, when the sheriff department came out, there was a man and a woman sheriff, and they each interviewed us separately. So after several minutes, the lady sheriff told me that I was being charged. Now, I'm the victim. I was injured, and I called 911. And I said, you got to be kidding me. Why am I being charged? She would not answer me why I was being charged. But she did tell me that I had to leave the house immediately. I could not go back in and get my purse or my keys for my car. She went and got my purse, and I told her where it was. Okay? Either I left the house that night or I would go to jail. Now, I'm 78 years old. Why would I be going to jail when my husband assaulted me? All right? I don't get it. All I'm asking for is a copy of that report that he told them why I was being sent out of the house and possibly sent to jail. I want a copy of the report. I have been trying since May to get that copy. I do not understand, as a citizen of the United States and a resident of Lake Forest, why I cannot get that copy to take to court during the divorce proceedings. Has anybody here got an answer for me?
Well, I would defer to the staff. I'm not sure
Mr.
about
Members of the
reports,
City
but-
Council, I will ask the chief to discuss the matter with the lady at the meeting at a separate time.
Okay. So our police chief will discuss the matter with you and then follow up. So.
Thank you.
Okay. And do you have enough information, Chief?
You can just see Sergeant Keller in the back. He'll get your name and information, and we'll contact you.
Thank you very much.
All right, great, thank you. Okay.
We've had no further requests to speak.
Right, so I think you may have been about to make a motion. I'm not sure.
I did
don't
make
wanna
the
put-
motion.
You did make the motion. Okay, so a motion to approve item number 16.
Yes.
Okay.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. So council members, cast your votes on item 16. And that item passed unanimously. That brings us to the public hearings portion of the agenda. Public hearings are they're open to the public. We're going to receive a staff report, and then there'll be an opportunity for public comment. So we'll start with item 17.
Agenda item 17, public hearing to consider street name for the Camden Square development, submitted by Director of Public Works, City Engineer.
Thank you, Mr. Members of the Council. I'll defer to Mr. Wheeler for a brief presentation on the item.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Good evening. The city's municipal code requires that the city Council hold a public hearing to adopt names for new streets. The Camden Square development, of which Taylor Morris is the owner and applicant, is requesting Primrose Drive as the name for their one private roadway which is within their proposed development. Staff recommends that the City Council conduct the public hearing and, pending the information and public input presented, adopt the resolution approving Primrose Drive as the private street name for the Camden Square development. Of note is that Primrose Drive was selected in order to match the English Village design of the proposed 72-unit development. With that, we're available for any questions.
Do we have any public comment on the item?
We've had no requests.
Okay, so I'll close the public hearing portion of this item, and I can't remember if I actually officially opened it, but okay, so I'll officially open it. We've received the staff report and officially closed the public hearing on this item. Bring it back to council for discussion. Any comments on this item?
On the name of it, I think that it fits adjacent to the theme of the complex, and so I think that I'd make a motion that we accept.
Second?
Motion and a second. If seeing no further discussion, council members cast your votes. Item 17 passes unanimously.
Agenda item 18, proposed policies and fee resolution for sports fields, gymnasium user groups, and community services department programs, submitted by Director of Community Services.
I understand we have a report from staff. So,
Yes, we do, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much. And I'll defer to Mr. McGill for a introductory presentation.
Thank you. Mayor, council members, we're excited. The sports park's opening soon. Thought it was an appropriate time to take a look at our fees and policies. We haven't updated them since 2009, and the code requires it. So the changes that we're proposing, our classifications are changed to expand opportunities for club and travel teams. We are changing the fee structures, and we've surveyed local cities so that our fees would be in line with what's being charged in South Orange County. We also want to generate new fees to offset the cost for maintenance at the sports park, because those are substantial. And finally, we're proposing policies to hold user groups accountable for field use when they don't use a field. So we're proposing a no-show policy. So at this time, what I'd like to do is turn over the discussion on the proposed classification and fees to Craig Harris, our Recreation Coordinator, who developed this. Good evening. Nope, push that one in.
Check. Good evening, council members. When staff kind of initiated this research here, we first looked at our current fee structure, and we realized that our current fees fall well below the regional averages. Our current classifications really limited field accessibility, so our goal here in proposing these new fees is kind of getting them more in line with regional norms, and also opening up usage opportunities to other user groups. As you can see here, we have proposed fees and classifications that prioritize service to residents of Lake Forest first. All the resident groups are identified within the first 6 groupings, or first 5 rather, and then groups 6, 7, and 8 are identified as non-resident groups. We also wanted to more clearly define where groups qualify, so there's less of a gray area about hourly rates that are proposed. And I guess finally, these proposed fees will allow the city to kind of recoup growing maintenance expenses at our athletic fields and facilities. Again, the current rates are well below what our neighboring municipalities are charging, and these proposed fees are a lot more in line with what we found in our research.
Yeah, another thing I'd like to point out is that for our local recreational leagues, we used to charge hourly rates. We're proposing that we change that to a flat $5 per player per season fee. So, for example, AYSO has approximately 2,500 players per season, so they pay $5 times $2,500. And we've shown these fees to them, and they know what to expect. Whoops. Yeah, and one of the other problems that we've had sometimes is people reserving fields that they don't use. So we're proposing a no-show policy that holds them accountable. They first time they get a warning, second time a $20 penalty, and the third time a $30 or $35 penalty, and then they could lose their privileges. We also didn't have anything in place for vendors. We're expecting at the sports park to have a lot of major events, and we didn't have a charge for vendor fees, so we're proposing $25 per day for resident businesses and $50 per day for non-resident businesses. We also have never offered adult softball, so the city staff is going to run that program. So what we did is did an analysis of the neighboring cities and also what the direct costs are to provide the program. We're proposing $600 fee for resident teams and $650 for non-resident teams.
Is that per evening, or how is that 600?
It's for a 10-game season?
Yeah.
For a 10-game season.
Okay, thank you.
Also, currently we charge $5 a year for a non-resident to get an ID so that they can enter the skate park. We're proposing that that fee be raised to $15 per year. And also we've had numerous occasions where people will lose their card, and we've been giving those back to them at no cost. We want to charge them at least $5 to replace that card. Go ahead.
On the ID cards,
Yes.
the ID cards also obviously have a cost associated with making the card. How much does that cost?
We've estimated it's around $7 just to make the card.
Would it be fair to charge a $5 fee for Lake Forest residents just to offset the cost for the thing, and maybe a $10 replacement free card instead of a $5 replacement fee?
Historically, we haven't charged residents to enter the skate park. That would be something that we
offset the cost of the card.
Yes.
I think just since we're in a public hearing portion, let's just let, unless we have some specific questions about the staff report, rather than getting into talking about any changes, let's just focus on letting Mr. McGill provide the staff report, and then we'll get to public comment, then we'll get to these questions. I don't mean to.
Sorry, Mr. Smith.
So.
Finally, we've offered Kids Factory and Teen Lounge for many years, and we haven't charged a fee at all. That provides after-school care. We bring them here to the Teen Lounge or on-site at all the elementary schools in the city, and that was free of charge to all of our elementary-age kids. We're proposing a $25 per semester fee for that. That's exactly the same as Mission Viejo does. They have the same Kids Factory program that's run by the school district. So we would propose that, and we've run all these fees past the Recreation Commission, and they've also endorsed them. So finally, for discussion purposes, we're going to leave up this slide, which is a summary of the proposed changes to the policies and fee, and we'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Great. And do we have some public comments on this agenda item?
We've had no requests.
No requests. Okay, so I'll close the public hearing portion of this item, and then I'll bring it back to council for discussion. So, Councilman Voight, do you have some other comments?
Do we outsource for the making of the business card or the membership cards for the?
No, we make them ourselves. We buy the supplies and have the printer at the skate park, and the $7.50 is for materials and time. That's what that estimate is.
So if Mr. Attorney, would that be considered a just to defer that? Would that be how would you if we went that direction? Could we not cause just a card fee?
Yeah, that'd be possible.
It wouldn't be an entry fee. It'd be just a card fee.
That's what. Yeah, it would be a reasonable fee because it relates directly to the cost of the service, or the city can underwrite it. Either way is fine.
Councilwoman McCullough.
Yes, I would like to address the fee to our citizens. When we first sold to our citizens to have a skate park, we promised them that we would keep it free to our citizens. The charges would be to outside citizens. Now, I don't know about you, but I believe that when adults give other adults or children their word, they should be men and women of their word. Now, we promised them that. Now, if you have to charge more for outside people, then you charge more for them. But we gave our word that the skate park would be free, and we took monies that was to keep it free. In fact, when we first, after we started and everything, and as we were getting close to closure, it came up, well, now we're going to charge. And a young man by the name of Pierre, he took that all overseas, and people from all different countries sent money to keep it free. So now you need to give me some reasons why we can't keep our word. Because I know all the people that agreed and the people that gave money to us to keep it free, and the people that were expecting it to be free. I know that may not seem like much to some people because maybe they don't keep their word. But to me, I know I only have one vote up here. And there's 4 other votes here, and it only takes 3. But I know I can't go back on my word. Thank you.
I think that we clarified that it wasn't a fee, it was just to offset the cost of the card. So, I mean, I have no problem. We have the money. It's up to the council.
All right. Just to be clear, Councilwoman McCullough, are you referring to the $5 replacement card, or are you referring to...
You can call it a replacement card, but we said everything would be free. And there's 4 of y'all. Y'all can do however you please. I've already stated my vote and my position.
I know. I'm just trying to get clarification. So,
you're calling it a replacement card. Now, I grant you, once we give them their card, if they lose it, they should have to pay because they were free. But if you're going to do anything besides that, my vote is no. It's 4 of the votes up here. Only takes 3 of you to pass it. I'm just stating my position. That's what you gave me the floor to state, and I'm stating my position. I've stated my cause, and I've stated my position. If you need to charge people to replace the card, they got it free. We still have kept our word. But when you talk about going back on your word, I'm not for that. So that's all I'm saying. Now, you can twist it however you want, but I don't think that the statement I made is hard to comprehend. If it is, you can ask me again, and I'll try to explain it more simplified where it can be understood.
Understood clearly. I just want to make sure that we weren't talking about the replacement card. So.
Nope, not talking about that. I'm talking about charging, period.
Hold on. And just to be clear, the promise, I support keeping the card free, and I think that responsibility is important for all of us, whether it's my children who are 12, 9, and 2, or adults. Okay, so when you lose it, then I think that it's fair that there's some sort of cost recovery. It doesn't even, the $5 doesn't even completely cover the cost of the card, but there's something there, so they're learning some responsibility. I think that's a good thing. But just to be clear, the vote that was taken to make it free, I think the only person who's up here right now is Councilwoman McCullough that made that vote. So if anyone chooses not to support keeping the card free, they're not going back on their word because they weren't one of the 5 that were up here at the time. So I just want to make sure that is fair for everyone else. But are there any other comments?
Yes. I have another comment.
Okay. Councilwoman McCullough.
This is something that has came up in other issues, and I want to state this publicly. The council that, first of all, the grassroots citizens that built this city and got our monies and our destiny away from the county, we may have not did everything totally correct because we were grassroots and had to trial and error and try to do it. And the very first council and the second council and all the other councils. But we got a pretty great city here. And one thing I've heard lately at this city, and I need to let you know that whether I'm up here as a council person or if I'm out there as a grassrooter, being a citizen here, I feel that when you're here as an elected official and you make promises, you're making it in the name of this city, not as an individual. So if you gave your word while you were here and we made that decision because the same exact people isn't here. The city is not released from their obligation. So for me, whether I'm sitting over there or whether I'm sitting here, if I made a promise as an elected official, I owe it to the citizens to keep my word. So I don't play those little games, well, it was the old council, or it was this. When we are in our official capacity, we're giving our word for the city. If we make a promise to a developer, if we make a promise to a citizen, we're giving our word. That's why my grandfather says, make very few promises, but keep all that you make. And I have to do that. I respected him highly because he kept all his promises to me. Thank you.
All right. Is there any other comments on this item? Councilman Bass?
I do. I think with respect to the replacement card fee for residents, their first card is free. The ones after that would be charged $5 to replace it. I suspect that the request for replacement cards decreases significantly because, hey, if you just go up if you're a resident and you go up the skate park and you forgot your card, or you're halfway there and you say, I forgot the card, I can just get a replacement, no problem. I mean, hey, that's human nature. That's what I'd do as a kid. So I think that it will be less of an issue to have this even come into play.
Are there any other comments on this item or questions?
One other comment.
Okay.
The council is also discussing, with respect to fees, approving them on requiring a supermajority on that. Councilmember McCullough said it takes 3 to pass it. I think that's correct legally for this particular item. I think in the spirit of what we're moving on the supermajority, although not legally required, I think that somehow ethically or morally required, it probably should be a 4/5 vote on this item too. An early implementation of that item.
If
Councilman Boyd.
I may, obviously, I like that we're going over the fees, because we have a lot of new fields coming online, whether it be the Baker Ranch Park, the Lake Forest Sports Park, the Portola Park. Maybe could we, as a council, or can I make a request of the Park and Recs, if we could have an expedited assignment for allocation of fields? Maybe we could up that as a trial and error and see how we play out in that.
Yeah, typically we have our allocation meeting in December. We could move that up into November, and we could see how that worked out, because, yeah, we're going through a lot of changes with moving into the sports park, a lot of new programs, so we want to see how things are working out. So, yeah, we could bring that back to you.
So that can bring back to us for an early...
We'll have an allocation meeting, and before we actually allocate the fields, you'll get some information about how that process is going.
That'd be wonderful. And if there's nothing further, I'd like to make a motion that we approve this agenda item.
Mayor Pro Tem Nick, I think, had a comment here.
Thank you.
There's a motion on the table.
Thank you. I spearheaded the motion whereby there would be a supermajority, not a simple majority, a supermajority required for this body, for this council, to be able to raise your taxes or your fees. That motion was that item was agendized, motion was made, and I believe it passed. I am under the distinct impression, Mrs. Smith, that ordinance applies to this, does it not?
Mayor and Council, that ordinance is on for second reading and adoption tonight, so it won't be in effect until 30 days after that, if it is passed.
So if we postpone this, so as of right now...
I'm sorry, it did pass. On your consent, sorry. 30 days from tonight, it will be in effect.
So it hasn't kicked in yet?
That's right, Mayor.
All right, thank you.
Well, that's why I said that in the spirit of that ordinance. It has a second reading, but legally not in effect for another 30 days, that I think we're under, at least in my mind, under an ethical obligation to act as though it is in place at this point in time, as opposed to trying to get something in under the door before it's officially in place.
So,
Hold on.
Yeah, so that's why I think it should pass with at least a supermajority.
Okay, Councilwoman McCullough.
Mayor, before you vote, could you please restate the motion according to how you're anticipating getting this new rule in?
Okay, I think the motion is from Councilman Voights, and the way I understand the motion is to approve the staff recommendation on the fee increases. Is that correct?
yeah, and adding no other cost, obviously, we didn't get a second on that, so just as is, staff report and the new fees, and it's minor fees, but the fact is that the costs of our new sports field is going to be $1 million in maintenance alone on our new sports fields, and so the fact is these minor little costs, you just bring it up because we haven't had an update for 12 years anyways, and so I think that it's fair that we've had an excellent outpouring of involvement from the major players, which is Lake Forest Little League, Pony League, AYSO Soccer, in putting this together, right?
Yeah, it was brought before the Park and Rec Commission, they were notified then, and also at the allocation meeting that was just recently held.
Okay, so just to clarify, there would be, there is no card fee, there's a replacement fee if they lose the card, but just...
For residents.
For residents.
Okay.
There would be now a $15 fee for non-residents, which is increased from $5.
I need to ask one more
Sure,
thing to
absolutely.
staff. Staff, on the $15 fee for non-residents, I'm quite sure you calculated that out, and without charging the fee for residents, would it be of assistance as far as your cost, to help balance out the cost that it costs us if that was moved to $25 since it's only per year?
Well, it's currently at $5, so that would be quite an increase.
So $5.
That's what it is currently.
It
Current.
says 15?
That's what we're proposing.
Oh, that's...
So it was
that's what I'm
5, so we'd like to incrementally raise it.
Okay.
So we went from 5
To
to
15.
15 rather than raise it higher because
Yeah.
even though it's $15 a
A
year,
year.
people,
Yeah.
they're used to $5.
And the $15 number, as I recall, is a
Okay.
recommendation from the Planning Commission, which was a little
From
higher than
Parks and
staff
Rec
had
Commission,
originally, that a little higher than staff had actually recommended, so it's, probably already creeping up a little bit higher than what you'd anticipated, so we might see a few less users, potentially, probably those that are more likely to be infrequent users, but, yeah. So, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. So there's a motion to approve the staff recommendations on the entire sports fees as they're spelled out in the agenda item. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Just very quickly, I'm compelled, as you may notice, I deliberately am the quietest usually, but I am compelled to tell you this. I have a perspective that my colleagues do not, in the sense that I was born 7,000 miles across the Atlantic Ocean. In most of the world, one problem governments have, especially in underdeveloped countries, is that there is no continuity. There is no continuity in governance. One government takes over, and they're under no obligation whatsoever, legally, ethically, or otherwise, to fulfill the promises made by the previous regime. It happens more often than you can imagine. South America, Middle East, parts of Far East. One of the reasons this country, many reasons, there are many reasons why this country is as great a country as it is. The number one reason is you, us, Americans. But one of the reasons is also the fact that there is continuity in government. There's continuity in governance. When a new president takes office, irrespective of the party, when Congress changes from, when the majority in either house changes from one party to another, the system continues. Things may change somewhat, but the system and the promises made continue. I was not part of that promise. The only person here who was part of that promise when that promise was extended to the people of Lake Forest and to those who call Orange County home. When that promise was made, only Mrs. McCullough was here. But I am just as obliged in my heart, in my mind, I am just as obliged as she is to live up to that promise. If the promise was made that there would not be fees or fees of this nature, that must be honored. Not to mention, even if that promise had not been made, I still wouldn't be so for fees, even if those fees are nominal relatively and they are to recoup cost. I still wouldn't be for fees when it comes to using sport facilities and publicly owned parks. We pay taxes, do we not? That brings many, many benefits to us as Americans. Well, one of them would be for our children, for our youth, and adults as well, to use facilities like this. There is more than one reason, but for several reasons, I cannot support this. I cannot assess fees, how nominal, however much nominal they may be considered by some of my colleagues. A fee is a fee. If we're promised there would not be a fee, people counted on that promise, people contributed time, effort, and money towards the establishment of the sports park. Not to mention, the more parks we have, the more sport facilities we have, inevitably the less crime. Imagine, instead of them vandalizing automobiles out there, they spend their time playing softball. But I personally would love that. I want that to happen to the greatest extent possible. For many reasons, this is not the right thing to do, assessing fees. I can imagine having fees as a deterrent element. If you do something, the next time you pay a nominal fee, and the following time you pay a more substantive. But from the get-go, from the start, no. Thank you.
Okay, just so I'm clear, so the question for Mr. McGill, the fees we're talking about are for essentially exclusive use of the field at that time, so the average resident wouldn't be able to just show up at an adult softball game and join in the game, right? So that's what they're paying for. That's why there's a fee. If there was no use in the field, is there like open gym in the gymnasium where no one has to pay, or people can show up and play on the fields when no one is using them? Are there those opportunities already?
Absolutely. These are all user fees.
Okay.
So, there'd be drop-in basketball. There are outside facilities that can be used. These are all for allocated field time and for program. So they are user fees.
Okay, so just to address Mayor Pro Tem Nick's comments there, basically what this is giving someone is the opportunity to exclusively use those fields, right? So no other resident would be able to unless they were a part of those teams, and that's why there's a fee, just like you have fees to play on soccer teams or baseball teams or things of that nature. So do your comments still stand?
If I may, Your Honor, thank you. I fully understand that. I fully realize that. But for us to reserve any field or any feature of the sports park to any one particular group so that they can have the exclusive use of it for a certain period of time, that can stand on its own. There doesn't have to be a fee for it to be exclusively used. In other words, a particular group can reserve it, and nobody else can use it at the same time. Nobody else can use it at the same time, not because they paid for it. Nobody else can use it at the same time because they reserved it. It's a what do you call it? A first come, first serve. They reserved it, they're using it. Now, I can imagine if somebody reserves it and they don't show up, then a no-show fee should apply. Otherwise, it would be subject to abuse. I can understand that. But again, from the get-go, no. But I fully understand Mayor Robinson's point. I do.
Mayor Robinson, Mayor, please.
Okay, I just want to make sure that you understood that part, so. Councilman Voigt.
I actually went through with our finance team. We pay just under $1.5 million in maintenance of our existing parks within the city of Lake Forest, and the small user fees that allocate these fields for AYSO or Little League or Pony League or Club Soccer League, it gives them the sole exclusive right to use those fields, and it actually defers the cost for some of you that don't have children playing on our parks. It actually allows us to defer some of the costs of the maintenance of these fields and keep our fields in such excellent standing. The new sports park that we have is coming online with 82 acres of open space, and that's going to cost nearly $1 million a year annually for maintenance. That's just for watering, mowing the lawn, having people out there fixing sprinkler heads. But the fact is that these little costs that we have is to defer, and it's a standard throughout all of Orange County and California that we as cities have to defer the cost of the maintenance of these sports fields because they are costly to use and keep up. And so that's why I make my motion that we accept this, and thank you, staff, for doing an excellent job in researching it with the sports entities.
So we have a motion and a second.
Second.
There. Oh, okay. I think you already seconded previously, but I appreciate the second. Any further discussion? Okay, council members, cast your votes, and this is to approve the agenda item as spelled out in the staff report, the recommended action. Item passes 4-1. And that's it for the public hearing items, and that brings us to the discussion action items for the evening, which are items 19 through 23.
Agenda item 19, ordinance amending the Lake Forest Municipal Code relating to parks and recreational facilities, submitted by Deputy City Manager, Director of Management Services.
Have we had any public comments on this item?
We've had no request to speak.
Mr. Mayor, I'll defer to Ms. Rose just quickly for a brief report.
Mayor and members of the City Council, this item is part of our ongoing effort to provide you periodic updates to the Lake Forest Municipal Code. And tonight we have an ordinance for your consideration regarding the construction of park improvements for community or youth groups. So the proposed ordinance would do the following. It would remove fee waivers for park and recreational facilities from the user fees and deposits section in the municipal code and place them in a new section, Park and Recreational Facilities Operational Policies. It would delete the master encroachment permit process that's currently used now for nonprofit youth groups that want to do improvements to our parks. It also defines the roles of community and our youth groups in performing maintenance and repair, and it specifically defines what new construction is and what routine maintenance and repair is in terms of these field improvements. It adds insurance requirements, which would require insurance naming the city as additionally insured party for each specific use permit, issued on a form acceptable to the city, and it provides a process for the review of insurance limits on a case-by-case basis. And finally, it adds a section, Waiver of Park Facility User Fees, Public Benefit, which replaces the language previously included in the use fees and deposits section, and it applies it specifically to park and recreational facility uses. That concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great. Are there any questions? I'm guessing we still don't have any public comment, so. Any questions from the council?
Move approval.
Okay, so there's a motion for approval.
I'll second that.
And a second. Any further discussion? Council members, cast your votes on item 19. And that item passed unanimously.
Agenda item 20, ordinance providing for electronic and paperless filing of Fair Political Practices Commission campaign disclosure statements, submitted by Deputy City Manager, Director of Management Services.
Again, Mr. Members of the council, I'll defer to Ms. Rosen on this one.
And I'd be happy to defer to our city clerk, Stephanie Smith.
Mayor and Council, state law authorizes local government agencies to utilize electronic or online filing systems for their campaign disclosure documents, provided that the local agency adopts an ordinance making findings that the system is a trusted system according to the state guidelines. And these would be the filings made by candidates, office holders, and control committees, political action committees. In January of this year, the City Council approved an agreement with NetFile to provide an electronic filing system that is compliant with state law. Tonight's ordinance would authorize the city clerk to accept electronic filings for campaign finance disclosure documents. The benefits to the community include the fact that e-filed statements made in lieu of paper filings make those reports immediately available to the public on the city's website by immediately redacting the confidential information and posting them right away, so that there's that increased transparency. The system also provides the accessibility to statements for staff that are doing research or for other political campaigns that are looking for historical data. That concludes the presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions?
I have.
Do we have any public comments on this item?
We've had no requests.
Okay. Councilman Bass.
A few questions. One is, how are signatures handled if it's filed electronically?
There are no wet signatures required.
Okay, thank you. And then what about this if, and hopefully it doesn't happen, but systems are systems, where the online system is down on the deadline to file?
The regulations of the Fair Political Practices Commission make allowances for that. If the online system is non-functioning on a deadline, the candidate or the committee would have an option. If they felt they needed to file a paper statement, they could certainly do that. However, there would be no penalty for a late filing for not meeting the deadline if the online system was unavailable.
Okay.
You would be required to file at the earliest convenience when the system became operational,
Yeah,
but there would be no penalty for filing late.
Okay, because I think if you file online one time, you have to file online thereafter because you've opted in.
That is correct.
So you can't then... Okay, but there are provisions in case the system is down.
Correct. There would be no penalty. The city clerk is actually the filing/fining officer, and if the system is not operational, certainly I would not issue late notices or fines for failure to file in a timely manner.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other discussion on this item? All right, seeing none.
Move the item.
Second.
There's a motion and a second on the item. Seeing no further discussion, council members, cast your votes.
I'm sorry, I did display it. It was 5-0.
Okay, sorry, that's my fault. So, item passed unanimously.
Agenda item 21, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Lake Forest, California, adding Chapter 2.18 to the Lake Forest Municipal Code relating to the regulation of professional lobbying activities by elected city officials, submitted by City Attorney.
Go to the city attorney.
Mayor and council, this was before the council conceptually previously, and then the specific text of the ordinance presented for first reading was on agenda at your last meeting. As the item was continued, it contained proposed amendments to Section 2.18.103, and the council asked that those specific amendments be brought back for consideration as part of the whole tonight. So this is back before you with those changes. I'm happy to elaborate or answer any questions that council may have.
Great. And do we have any public comments on this item?
We've had no request to speak.
Council members, do you have any questions or comments with respect to this item? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the item.
So a motion to approve the item.
Second.
Motion and a second. Seeing no further discussion, council members cast your votes. Item 21 passes unanimously.
Mayor Robinson, I'm wondering if I can ask you a question.
Sure.
As you know, I'm new here, well, a year and a half. I'm the rookie. And I don't think we've done this before. I don't know if it's permissible. I am still confused over the item whereby some of us approved the fee in relation to the sports park. Can I briefly ask a question as to how that vote went down?
Sure, but that vote went down 4-1 with you dissenting.
But I'm the only one who dissented, right? I'm puzzled because Councilwoman McCullough said that she must honor her word to the residents of Lake Forest.
Well, let's...
And yet, so I was the only one dissenting, though?
Let's bring that up. You can bring that up in council comments and kind of... So.
Mayor, after this vote, could I ask for a reconsideration so you can go back so I can explain to him there? I think that he got two things twisted up.
I'll give a reconsideration. So rather than talk through the issue,
could we complete
is that permissible, Mr. City Attorney?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. We'll go back for reconsideration then. So we're on item 22. I know you hadn't read it yet, but I said after this one, so we'll get through item 22, then we'll go back to item 18.
Agenda item 22, proposed dog park at the terminus of Baffin Bay Drive on the northeast side of Bake Parkway, submitted by Assistant City Manager.
Mr. Members of the Council, I'll defer to Mr. Belmer on this item.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the Council. The item before you this evening is a proposal at a conceptual level to consider the potential development of a dog park at the terminus of Baffin Bay Drive. By way of background, the City Council of Lake Forest confirmed back in January of 2013 its interest in establishing an off-leash dog park, which does not presently exist in the City of Lake Forest. Specifically, the Council referred the item to the Parks and Rec Commission for study and evaluation. That was a rather extensive and deliberate process wherein the Commission looked at first establishing criteria for what would be a viable dog park site, and then evaluated various issues and actual potential sites for the development of an off-leash dog park. Through that process, I think fair to conclude that it's somewhat challenging to locate a site, certainly in an existing park, particularly where there's proximity to existing homes. On tonight's agenda, the Commission's recommendations are being presented to the City Council for its consideration. Concurrently with all this, of course, Baker Ranch, which is a partnership, Shea Baker Ranch Associates, which is in a partnership of Shea Homes and Toll Brothers, is advancing the development of its master plan community. To that point, Phase 1 is about halfway complete. And of course, we've all seen the new homes that are under construction or completed. In fact, I think we have some of our new residents moving in now. Sales have exceeded expectations, which is, of course, a positive event. And consequently, Shea has accelerated its grading operations for what would be Phase 2, which include the homes within the loop road that they've built, and also the neighborhoods on the north or east side of Alton Parkway. Shea, of course, gave considerable forethought to how it designed and planned its community. Of course, ultimately, that was approved by the City Council. And they've placed a focus on including quality recreation facilities and amenities in that master plan community. And the picture to the right on this slide is the recently completed Baker Ranch Community Park, which is a 7-acre park recently opened and welcomed by the City of Lake Forest. We call this slide Opportunities Collide at Baffin Bay because through that process of designing and constructing Phase 1, it's a collaborative process, of course, between Shea Baker Ranch Associates and the City of Lake Forest. And in that process, conversations ensued between the Public Works Department and Development Services Department here in the City of Lake Forest and Shea Baker Ranch about the potential of realizing the Council's goal for an off-leash dog park while simultaneously continuing Shea's goal of developing quality recreational amenities, not only for its new residents, but for the residents of City of Lake Forest on a whole. And the particular site in question is identified on this slide in red. It is at the terminus of Baffin Bay Drive, which is currently a public street that ends in a cul-de-sac. And Baffin Bay Drive was originally planned to extend all the way through to Alton Parkway when Shea's property was approved for industrial development. When the plan changed to residential, of course, they changed their plan for the local roadway system, and that no longer necessitated the extension of Baffin Bay. The particular parcel in question is about 21,000 square feet, and it is surrounded. This is the most recent aerial photograph we have, and all the dirt, essentially those lots will all be constructed with homes as part of the Baker Ranch community. The green is a park that is owned and managed by the HOA, constructed by Shea Baker. It's one of their many signature open space recreation and amenities referred to as the arbors. Adjacent to the red parcel on the left, which would be the east, are two commercial businesses. One is the Smart Stop Storage, which is immediately adjacent to the parcel, and Public Storage, which is just to the south of that. The Public Storage facility does not take its vehicular access off Baffin Bay, but the Smart Stop Storage business does. When this opportunity was originally identified, Shea approached the city and asked if the city would be interested in exploring this. We took it to the OSA executive team, felt the idea had merit, particularly given the council's interest in establishing an off-leash dog park. And so that resulted in Shea Baker Ranch opening a dialogue with the adjacent commercial property owners who initially expressed their interest and support for the project. The Smart Stop owner plays a particular role in this case because they're the fee owner of the parcel, although their ownership is subject to an easement for street and highway purposes in favor of the City of Lake Forest. Based on that initial positive feedback, Shea, on its own merit, or own initiative rather, prepared a conceptual plan that demonstrated how that 21,000 square foot parcel could potentially be developed as a dog park. And here it is. We had to orient, so now we're looking east to west versus north to south. You can see Baffin Bay is on the left, that's the cul-de-sac that terminates. And this conceptual plan shows a series of amenities that would include landscaping that surrounds the site, and a central entrance and exit to the park, which is the square in the middle, with a shade structure that would provide separate entrances for small dogs and large dogs. And as you can see, based on where the site is located and how it's situated, it enjoys pedestrian access and actually vehicular parking proximity both from Baffin Bay and the internal loop road that Shea constructed as part of its project. think we can advance to the next slide. So initially, in conversations with Shea Baker Ranch Associates, their offer to the city in terms of the partnership would be that they would construct the park, design the park at no cost to the city, and they estimate those costs currently to be between $300,000 and $350,000. The city's role primarily would just simply be to accept ownership once construction was complete and to maintain the park as a city-owned park. SmartStop, as I mentioned, plays a relatively critical role. They would need to convey possession of the parcel. That would be to the city initially through an easement because of some lender restrictions they have, and then ultimately convey ownership of the park to the city. So essentially, what these roles and responsibilities mean is the park would be constructed at no cost to the city, and the city would receive the land also at no cost, which is a pretty unique situation. The potential of the park on the 21,000 square foot parcel gave us pause to discuss the potential of reimagining, if you will, Baffin Bay. One of the criteria identified by the Parks and Rec Commission when they initiated their efforts to find a site in Lake Forest was parking. There needs to be convenient parking. Given the fact that Baffin Bay currently only provides access to a single business, which is SmartStop, we thought there might be merit and mutual benefit in vacating Baffin Bay. And this preliminary concept includes doing just that. Baffin Bay would be vacated, which would require some quitclaim deeds from the adjacent owners, which include the public storage owner and Shea. Shea actually owns the east side of what is currently the improved portion of Baffin Bay. That would essentially convert Baffin Bay from a public street to a parking lot that would support the dog park. And in so doing, we would reimagine it to include angled parking on the east side of the improved roadway, parallel parking on the other side, and parallel parking around the cul-de-sac. When we recontour Baffin Bay, that modifies the access, certainly, and visibility, arguably, to the SmartStop storage business. And while they're resoundingly in favor of this project, their request of the city was, could you offset some of those impacts with an entry sign along Bay Parkway that would give us the visibility we more or less think we have at this point in time? We said that seems like a reasonable request, given the modifications to the roadway. And we asked if they would be interested or willing to have a dual-purpose sign. They are. And so Shea, again, prepared a concept of what that would look like. And it would be a two-paneled sign that would identify SmartStop self-storage on the top and the city's dog park on the bottom. And that would be located right at the corner of Big Parkway and Baffin Bay Drive. The city sign, which on this concept plan shows Barker Ranch, it's just a concept at this point in time. The sign panel would, of course, be ultimately determined by the City of Lake Forest, most likely with some comments and suggestions from the Parks and Rec Commission. Okay, advancing. We mentioned in the staff report, which is rather lengthy. We wanted to cover all the points. Quite a bit needs to happen. This is at a very conceptual level. And so there's still quite a bit of steps that would need to be completed in order to realize this project. First and foremost, the City Council would need to determine that the project has merit and is worth pursuing and elect to proceed. Assuming you do, then staff's recommendation is that we would refer the concept plan to the Parks and Rec Commission, given the fact that this opportunity was identified subsequent to the Council's direction and the efforts of the Parks and Rec Commission. We would then need to initiate the street vacation process, and that involves ultimately actions by both the Planning Commission and City Council. And as we mentioned in the staff report in some detail, we do need to finalize agreements with the SmartStop self-storage owner. And those are subject to review by their lender. They are very optimistic that their lender would review those documents favorably. And also with Shea and Toll to define the roles between the city and Shea and Toll regarding construction and ultimate maintenance obligations, and continue our efforts with public storage to get the quitclaim deeds to convert Baffin Bay from a public street to a parking lot. project benefits, as we mentioned in the report, the site, we looked at the site against the criteria that the Parks and Rec Commission created. And while there's, nothing's perfect, generally speaking, we think this site is fairly well suited to the criteria that the Parks and Rec Commission identified. Those include things like convenient access, it's economically feasible, certainly in this case with free land and potential construction no cost to the city, we meet that criteria. And perhaps most importantly, it doesn't involve introducing a park into an existing neighborhood where we have existing residents. So at this point, there's no known opposition from immediate neighbors. I've touched on the economic feasibility. Timing, if we're successful in resolving our negotiations with Smart Stop and Public Storage, we believe this park could be delivered certainly within a year, which we think is important, given the Commission and Council's desire to explore an off-leash dog park and the fact that the Commission is recommending another site for the Council's consideration. Certainly this would give us an opportunity to assess actual usage and demand on this site. So we think it's a great place to start. So our recommendation at this point in time is that the Council authorizes staff to initiate the various actions that we identify in the staff report, and perhaps the world's longest recommended action. And at this point in time, we're of course available to answer any questions that you may have. We do have Bob Yoder with us this evening from Shea, who I'm sure would be also ready, willing, and able to answer any questions the council may have.
Okay, let's go to public comments first.
Bob Holtzclaw, followed by Jim Gardner.
And by the way, thank you very much for the report. I know that a lot of time and effort went into it, and so appreciate it, which made it one of the longest recommended actions of all time. You know the routine, but just for everybody else, so when you come to the mic on this item or any future ones, make sure that you state your name and the city you live in. So.
Okay. My name is Bob Holtzclaw. I live in Lake Forest, and I've been a resident here for 30-some years. As you can see in the picture right there, that's what the dog park actually looks like. It's extremely small. I'll read some of it, what I wrote down here. This is a picture of proposed dog park on Baflin Bay, which is about 8,000 square feet, not 21,000. 21,000 is including the parking lot. And it's standing at a far end of, I'm standing at the far end of the property, and you can see how small this property is. On the top of it is a small size, and it's going to be divided into two pieces on top of that for large dogs and small dogs. This means 4 to 5 dogs maximum will be able to use this before you're having problems, since dogs like to run off leash. Lake Forest has approximately 9,000 dog owners. If 5 dogs were to use that one size for the large dogs, we're talking about 0.06% of the dog population. Hardly a good investment for the city. Recently, the Recreation Department was looking into a development property, Normandale and Whispering Hills, which both would be an excellent location for a dog park, and one the city could be proud of. Baker Ranch is a good neighbor, and if they want to have a dog park, they did promise this to the residents there as part of one of their brochures about possibly having a dog park. Fine. I think this would be probably large enough for just them. and I don't think we should include this in any way in our 5-year plan for a dog park. We're looking for a dog park for the entire city, not something that is about maybe to the wall out there, and that's at the end of the double doors back there as the city dog park. It just doesn't make any sense. I emailed all of you, well, all but one, of pictures of the dog park and also the parking lot. It's filled with rental trucks. And I don't know where they're going to plan all those rental trucks other than the parking lot. And you can see there's not one civilian car on there. It's all rental trucks, the ones I emailed you. So I hope you do not take this as part of the city's dog park, because we're still going to be looking for a dog park since 1998, when the first time it was brought up to the city council. And, Baker Ranch is a good neighbor, like I said, and if they want this for their neighbors, fine. I think it should be consumed by them and run by them. Thank you.
Jim Gardner, followed by Bob Yoder.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Jim Gardner, and thank you for all your work on this project, Dave. Bob and I didn't coordinate our presentations, but I agree with him on all his essential points. It's great, sounds like a very good project, but it doesn't substitute for a Lake Forest dog park. I'll be talking about that later on in the evening. In the meantime, I do have to correct Bob on one thing. He said there are 9,000 licensed. So almost all the research on licensing versus unlicensing says about 50%, sometimes 30%, sometimes 70%, basically 50%. So there are actually 12 to 18,000 dogs in the city, including 2 dogs that I have. And Bob's and my calculations independently came out about the same. If you look at this room, you went from there and there weren't these funny little holes, you're looking at the size of the dog park, virtually this room without the cutouts. It's the size of the dog park. It's nice, 5, 6 big dogs could play in that, 10, 12 little dogs could play in that, but it certainly is limited. What it basically is, it's a neighborhood dog park. Quite frankly, I think the neighborhood dog park is a great idea. I think we should have many neighborhood dog parks. I believe Dana Point has 5 different neighborhood dog parks. So my recommendation would be, yeah, sure, it's great. It's a win-win for everybody. It's not the city's dog park, but it's the first of our neighborhood dog parks. If we're going to get it off the ground, in addition, I'd recommend that you set up a dog park committee, people to work with the planners, to work with those 9,000 dog owners in the city. Let's help raise funds for what's not in the city budget, as many other dog park committees do throughout Orange County, throughout the country. They can raise funds for those extras that dog owners do. So this is a great project, and I'm happy to endorse it, happy for it to go forward, and look forward to many more neighborhood dog parks for the city. Thank you.
Bob Yoder.
Mayor and Council, I'm Bob Yoder with Shea Baker Ranch. Residence is San Clemente, so I'm not a Lake Forest resident, but close enough with all the work we're doing. Yeah, I agree it's small, but we think it's actually, this is modeled, just so you're aware, after a park that we didn't do, but our designer did in Playa Vista. That's a much more urban and intense, higher density community, and I've seen that several times. This one's just maybe 10 feet shorter, and that thing gets used a lot. So I think it's going to get, I can't say how many dogs can really use it at a given time. I think one of the options, we showed it as kind of bifurcated. That would be something maybe the Parks Commission could weigh in on. It doesn't have to be. It could be one big area where all dogs can romp together. So, but we obviously, we think it's a good win-win. To me, it's kind of akin really to the community park. The reason we had proposed that the city take it is because it really is publicly accessible from from Bake, just like the community park is more publicly accessible from Rancho. So I think Dave covered everything in the report, and we have been disclosing it both ways to our homeowners, that it's just a possibility, but we have sold homes in that area, so it would, we'd like to know the direction. We can't really, obviously there's subsequent steps, so we will still not be able to, say for certain what it is, but I think the further we get into the community, the more difficult it is to go one way or the other. And just so you're aware, the area, I think it's a pretty creative use there. That area is kind of riddled with at least 2 significant water easements. So our initial plan that we submitted is just kind of a passive, kind of paseo connection. So it'd be, landscape and grass. It'll be pretty, but there's really, it's a hard area to deal with because of those easements. So I think this is kind of a creative use that we can get something productive in that area. So, any questions? I'm happy to answer.
Well, just first of all, we want to thank you for stepping up and offering to fund the $300,000 to $350,000 potential costs. So I mean, it's in my mind, you've gone above and beyond, and I'm very impressed by that. I've been impressed by your entire development. So just this past Friday night, I had the opportunity of being up at Baker Ranch Community Park. We were doing movies in the park with, we showed Wizard of Oz, and just a ton of families up there, and they were just really impressed by the view. And I kept telling them that you all were to give us a park, but you didn't have to give us one with such an amazing view. And so I was very, very thankful and impressed by that, and I've constantly been impressed by your company there. So I just wanted to make sure that I stated that.
Appreciate that. Thank you. And I hope it's $350. We haven't hit a budget yet, so we'll see if we can get this one.
Bob, I'd like to personally commend you and thank you for your dedication to our city. I'm 100% in support of this, and the fact is, my theme all along has been that we regionalize this a little bit because I'm not the kind of put my big dogs in the car and drive them across town. I'd rather take them and walk them to a local park, and I think this is a great start, and I think that your commitment to our city through the beauty that you're bringing to our city in the north part. I want to say that my cousin grew up here in Lake Forest, graduated from El Toro 6 years ago as a Newport police officer, just bought a Shea home up there, and they just posted it on Facebook. So he's moving in the neighborhood, so my family's already buying your properties over there, and we're just excited to see that. And thank you for your dedication to the dog park and helping us fulfill our promise to getting the dog park process started here. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the comments.
Was there a comment?
The council, just to clarify one point, maybe two, the dog park parcel itself is 21,000 square feet. The play area for the dogs is approximately 9,000, so that doesn't include the sidewalks around. But the 21,000 square feet does not include the parking lot. That's in addition to. Also, just to clarify, with regards to the trucks, we are aware of that, as is Smart Stop self-storage. And they are aware of what's causing that. They understand that if this project is improved, that would need to be corrected. And we've even discussed with them the potential of time parking on that road, because they believe that's not them, they believe it's their customers. And they are instructing their customers that needs to stop, and it certainly could be stopped if there was time parking within that parking lot.
Great, thank you. We had any other public comments?
We've had no requests.
Okay, so I'll bring it back to council. Councilwoman McCullough?
Yes. Excuse me. Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to approve staff recommendation. I don't feel that we need one huge city dog park. I'm more comfortable with several, and this is a very good start. Not only is it a good start, we have someone that is willing to even take the expense of building it. And for me, I'm very grateful that we have this first start on dog park, and there's probably will be many others. So I'd like to make the motion.
I'd like to second that motion and say that I, too, envision this as a beginning, and I think it's a great beginning because I think the people of Lake Forest have been waiting, anticipating, and I want to thank the Park and Recs Commission for their dedication and perseverance in trying to find a location and coming up with the criteria of what is required. Thank you. I know some of you are here tonight, so I want to thank the Park and Recs Commission and say that, you've done a great job, and I'm excited about this one.
All right, so there's a motion and a second on the item.
I just want to make a quick comment, if I may, Mayor.
Nick?
Mr. Horskla, you know how grateful to you I am. I am sitting here in a great part because of you and your support. I'll never forget that. I'll take it to my grave. I know you would want us to vote no on this. The way I'm thinking of it is, it is a good start. This is not to substitute the dog park that we are after, nor is it going to make us relax thinking, well, we have a dog park, so there's no more effort needed. No. I, for one, remain, and I know a couple of my colleagues on this dais remain as committed as before to a dog park that even makes you happy, makes me proud. But this is a good start. It's a, let's call it a regionalized dog park. It is not one for the entire city, although the entire city can use it. But it'll be either one of several, or just a good start. Not to mention $300,000 or $400,000 that we don't have to pay as taxpayers of Lake Forest, as residents of Lake Forest. Somebody else is paying it. So I really think it's a good opportunity. Again, I beg of you to give me this latitude here. I truly believe it's a good start at the risk of being redundant. I firmly remain committed to you and to the many, many residents of Lake Forest who want a larger, more centralized dog park. My commitment is as solid as it has been over the last 2 years. And once again, at the risk of being redundant, think about the fact that it's not costing you and me anything. So that is why I am in support of it. But I promise you, shy of a fatal heart attack on my part, I will deliver that dog park to you. Whether it's Normandale, Whispering Hills, elsewhere, we will get that to you. Thank you, sir, and thank you for listening.
Any further discussion on the item?
Just briefly, I'm in support of this. This is contrary to what some may say. It is a great investment. I mean, when you can get something that the community desires at no cost to yourself, it's hard to consider it anything other than a great investment, unless you're a mathematician and say you can't divide by zero. But that's a whole other issue. But I think it's a great asset, will be a great asset to the city without any city costs and construction. Thank you.
Great. Seeing no further discussion, there's a motion and a second, so council members cast your votes on item 22. That item passes unanimously.
Thank you, one and all.
All right, and so at this point, we're going to reconsider item 18.
Yes.
And so, Mr. City Attorney, maybe you can guide me a little bit, since it's a public hearing which we opened and closed, so what would the best process be to handle it?
Robert's Rules of Order, which are advisory to the council, allow the council to place the item back on the agenda and to reopen the hearing. Okay. The motion needs to be made by someone who is on the prevailing side of the vote.
Okay.
The second can be made by anyone.
I will move that we reopen the public hearing on item 18.
Second.
There's a motion and a second, so you need to take a full vote here, right?
Yes, to get it back on the agenda.
Council members, cast your votes to rehear item 18. And that reconsideration opens, or passes unanimously, and so I will officially open the public hearing on item 18. And do we have any new public comments? I guess.
We've had no additional requests.
I'll bring it back to the council. I see Councilwoman McCullough has a comment.
Yes. The comment that was made by Mayor Pro Tem Adam Nick was that I had changed from my original standing. I think that because there was a little bit of crosstalk that I wasn't followed. I said for the Etnies skate park is where it was promised to not charge our citizens. When we asked them to dip into the taxpayers' money to do it, that was what I was saying, that I was adamant that I would not support, because the council at that time, speaking on behalf of the citizens, stated that if they would allow us to build that skate park, the citizens of this city would not have, their children would not have, or an adult, if they skate park, they would not have to pay it. For any of you that was here during that time, you'd see it was a big thing in the paper, and Pierre, that came to us to build the skate park, in those days we had competitions from all over the world. He told out on, and I was the only person that voted no on it at that time, and he told the people in the other countries, and they sent donations and asked to keep the skate park open. You can go back in the old archives of the newspaper, and you will see that that's what's happened. There is someone, some of the staff was here, and so is former Mayor Rudolph is here. And that's what I said I was voting. I would not vote to have fees or costs to our citizens for the Etnies skate park. I made sure that it was a clarity that if they lose their free card for the citizens of this city, not the people outside, people didn't pay for their taxpayers tax money didn't help pay for that skate park, that yes, they should have to pay to buy a new card, because that teaches them a lesson to hold on to their things. But as far as fees for the Etnies skate park to the citizens of this city, that's what I voted on. That was my vote, that they would not have to charge. The other fees for the people playing ball, when our children go to other cities and play on their fields, they have to pay. And so we need those fees for keep the things maintenance and everything. So I was not going back on my word. I was my preference was Etnies skate park that was promised to our cities for their tax dollars would stay free for their children and their adults to skate.
And I can't remember if I officially closed the public hearing, but I'm doing that now if I didn't already. So, okay. Any further discussion on the item? Okay, so then we will,
we have to make a new motion?
We have a motion.
Yeah, it's back on the...
So I make a new motion to take for the same motion, we want a new motion. I need a second.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second to approve the staff recommendation as it stands. And council members, cast your votes. That item passes 4-1 with Mayor Pro Tem Nick dissenting. Brings to item number 23.
Mayor, if I could just interject some housekeeping here.
Sure.
When you get to item 23D, Mayor Pro Tem Nick and I consulted earlier. His home is within 500 feet of Normandale, the property in question on D, and so when we get to that point, he's elected to recuse himself from participation on that sub-item.
Okay, thank you very much.
Agenda item 23, capital improvement projects budget update submitted by city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Members. The City Council, under the broad category of capital improvement project budget update, we have 5 items for your consideration this evening, and our recommendation is that you deal with each of them in sequence and individually. We have so structured them as items A through E for your consideration this evening. As the council is aware, and for the benefit of the public, the city adopts an annual operating budget. However, we do adopt a 2-year capital improvement budget. Ordinarily, projects might get designed in 1 year and constructed in the following. Consequently, we budget for capital improvements in that fashion. Both of the operating budget and the CIP budgets are included as part of our 5-year business plan, which is updated every 2 years. And so when we look at the fiscal year 15-16, we'll be adopting a new CIP, a 1-year operating budget, also adopting a new 5-year plan. So the staff believed it was timely to give the council an update as to the status of the various projects that are included in the fiscal year 13 through 14 CIP budget. And as we've identified, it contains about $35.7 million being allocated in fiscal year 2013-14. Now that's a considerable amount of money, but it also applies to the Lake Forest Sports Park, which is a considerable expense in this current fiscal year. And it includes about $14.1 million in fiscal year 14-15. So we're sort of a little bit more than midterm, but we thought it would be appropriate to give the council fundamentally a good sense of where we stand, but also to bring back to you this evening for your consideration update on a few of the items I identified. I will be deferring to staff members for more particular presentations on those specific items. But you did, within your 5-year plan, identify a few things that are there for your further consideration. Given the status and progress on some of those projects, we believe it is timely for the council to consider moving some of them along a lot faster and then therefore amending the current CIP. We would be doing that not this evening, but bring that back to you after we get full direction from council on any of the things that you hear this evening, and make some modifications. And for example, project in question that we believe ought to be amended into that new CIP, or the existing CIP, is related to Village Pond Park. As it relates then to what we're wanting you to look at, clearly you need an update as to what the status is of the projects that are currently there. We have done that for you in a couple of different places in your staff report. Of course, there are a number of projects that deal with traffic and street repairs and maintenance, certainly on park facilities, as the council is aware. Of course, the largest one, as I just mentioned, relates to the Lake Forest Sports Park, which is certainly, as we've identified, under construction at $43.5 million in total. That's certainly just the construction project. Of course, the council is aware that the cost of that facility is significantly more than that when you take into consideration the grading as well as acquisition of land and everything else that goes into that, including design. There's a couple of other types of park projects that are also in the CIP. We won't go through each of them individually. I don't know if Mr. Wheeler had a wonderful PowerPoint presentation, but if he did, I'll tell him to keep it in his pocket and simply tell you that we can sort of get down to the bottom line. All of the projects in the current CIP are within schedule and within budget. And we'd be glad to respond, I know he would, as it relates to any of the current projects that you have underway. And that is actually item number A, and in as much as our conclusions that those are all either completed, under construction, or in design and on time, that we would recommend that the City Council receive and file the report on the status of your current capital improvement projects at that point. And we'd be glad to respond to any questions, Mr. Mayor, as it relates to item number A.
I did have a question actually on page 310. I believe it's actually street sign replacement, and we've talked a little bit about this. It says it's currently looking for grant funding, so I wanted to try to understand what the status was with that one specifically. And I apologize I didn't get a chance to ask you guys earlier about this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. You can see me later if you want to see the full PowerPoint presentation, if you have the time. In terms of the street sign replacement, this was something that was added to the CIP as a project. What they are basically, they used to call it Safe Route to School grants, but there are grants available. They've since changed the name. But there's grants available primarily around schools for safety updates and things of that nature. So we've applied those grants. Our recommendation to you would be let us go through and see the results of those grants if we get them back. If we don't or are unsuccessful with those, have the discussion again on what you may want to allocate this next spring when we do the next 2-year CIP. Might be a prudent way to move forward with trying to replace more street signs out there. We have a significant backlog. The city's obviously getting older. We've been tracking those projects, so we're trying to get the grant funding that we can.
And incorporated in street signs, is that mainly stop and yield signs type things, or does that also include the street name signs, like Forest Drive? Or
Correct. All of the above would be inclusive. The grant itself is more geared towards signing around schools, the crosswalks, school crossing, stop signs, more safety-related signs.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions on that A portion?
Just a comment. Sometimes it's difficult to do, but on the streets resurfacing and slurry seal type projects, I'd hope that, if possible, that it could plan the work so it's done, that where it is occurring adjacent to schools or on the routes to schools, that have this construction happen during the summer when the school's not in session. It's just so congested around schools these days that if we can avoid doing the construction during that period, I think it would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, and since we're breaking this up into pieces, what's the appropriate time here to go to public comment, if there are any? Have they broken them out?
The public comment speakers are by individual item. I have had no requests for 23A.
Okay, great. Fantastic. So, seeing no further discussion. Oh, Councilwoman McCullough, do you have a...
Yes, I'd like to ask staff, where are you seeking your grant from for the light?
For
the street sign replacement.
The street sign replacement, it used to be called a Safe Route to School. It escapes me right now, but it may actually be in the staff report. But it's a state grant. It's a state grant. It's a Safe Route to School grants. That used to be what they called, and now it's an active transportation participation grant.
Well, the reason I was asking you because SCAG has started doing some of those grants also, and so you may. If we do not get the one from the state, you may want to double back with SCAG because they're doing a lot of the grants, especially when it's dealing with schools or safety, anything like that.
Terrific. We'll look into that. Thank you.
Yes. All members are eligible to apply.
Councilman Boyce?
Yeah, Tom, this is for you. On the sidewalk repairs, I've heard some complaints on up in Foothill Ranch. There was some sliding, and is that going with the slurring of the streets? You're going to repair the sidewalks up in Foothill Ranch?
Yes. In fact, we're marking them out Thursday.
So that's included in this?
Yeah, that's included in the slurry seal project, which is a subcategory of the street resurfacing and slurry seal. So that's just our annual kind of generic contest. That's where we're doing Big Parkway, we're doing the slurry seal, we're doing Los Alisos.
Now, on that subject, as we drive through the city, you obviously have your time and date that you're supposed to slurry the streets and clean up the streets and stuff. Is that when you fix the sidewalks, or if there's a sidewalk that's coming up, you guys actually go out and make spot repairs on those things?
Correct. We do all of the above. We'll do spot repairs on sidewalks as we're notified. We will do sidewalks in the zones that we're working on for our pavement in that particular day. And then also, we have some separate funds set aside to do additional sidewalk repairs.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no further discussion on the item, I'll...
We file and receive this.
Support.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Council members, cast your votes. Item passed unanimously, and just for clarification, so the comment was file and receive, but are we talking about the receive the recommended action here? So, okay, receive and file. Okay, got it. All right, great. Now we're to number B, or letter B.
Agenda item 23B, the Whispering Hills Park site, submitted by Director of Community Services.
Mr. Members of the Council, I will defer to Mr. McGill on this item.
Thank you. Mayor and council members, during the discussion of the city's strategic 5-year plan, there was some discussion of different alternatives for the Whispering Hills site. The site's currently vacant. Several alternative parks plans were discussed for either a dog park, a community park, or an arena soccer park. So the city council may designate one of those uses and direct staff to develop plans. They could do a combination of the plans or any other park ideas that you might have. What staff recommends is that we go out for RFP for design services, hire a consultant, hold community workshops to gather input, and then develop a conceptual plan that would be presented to the Parks and Recreation Commission, then eventually would come to City Council for review and final approval. So what we're asking tonight is that you authorize staff to issue an RFP and to amend the fiscal year 2013-15 CIP to include the preliminary design costs for the project. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Are there any questions? We want to keep comments for after public comment, but any questions?
On that, we have a adjacent nearby park which is Normandale. Could we include that in that? Is that possible, or is that just keep the focus on the one park?
Mr. Members of the Council, I would suggest that it be a separate project if in fact you have interest in Normandale. They actually are fairly separate in space. So this would be a project solely as it would relate to Whispering Hills.
Now, in the tradition of Lake Forest, we've gone out to community for their input always when we did the sports park.
Yes, that's the standard procedure, is to advertise to the community, have a workshop, gather input, come up with some plans, vet those in front of the Park and Rec Commission, and come up with a final plan, a preliminary master plan that we present to the City Council for approval before we go to construction.
Wow.
All right, we'll go to public comment.
Jim Gardner, followed by Kenton Betcher.
How many do we have in total? So get a good idea. On letter B.
For letter B, we have 3.
Great.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff. My name is Jim Gardner. I live in Lake Forest. So here's something you don't normally hear me say. I think you're going too fast. Usually I'm saying the opposite. Tonight, I think on this specific issue, you're going too fast. Generally speaking, when you want to do a needs assessment or resource allocation or any kind of a project like this, you look at the system-wide analysis and then you break it down in its component parts. You don't start, unless you're doing advanced bacterial analysis, focusing on the piecemeal project. What do I mean by that? I mean there are some prior questions we probably should be asking ourselves. For example, what land do we have? Whispering Hills is not the only little piece of land hanging out there. There's that funny little spot by the railroad tracks in El Toro. There's the space at the end of Ridge Park that we've talked about for potential dog park as well. There's Normandale. There's pieces of land all over the city. Great. That's a big picture. What do we need? Well, we say we need another dog park or neighborhood dog park. We might need a senior center. And there's a lot of things we need. There's a lot of things we need. There's a lot of pieces of land we have all over the city. What are the resources we have to deal with those together? And then finally you start putting those together. This is our priority and that fits best there. But this thing here well, it doesn't go there, but that would fit there. Unless you do that kind of system-wide analysis, you're going to make errors. Down the line, you're going to find out, shit, oh, excuse me, shucks, you should have put D. Why did we go ahead with that? That would have been a much better place. So what I'm suggesting is slow down, take it easy, go back to square one, use this format that you have there, great, bring in a consultant, but don't limit them to just, oh, can we fit this in over here? Let's look at where do we have land left in the city, what are all the things we need left to be done in the city, and what goes best where. So I'm not opposed or in favor of anything particular, but I think you need to do that global look before you start looking at this one little place and can we fit this one little thing in there? Yeah, maybe we can, but maybe something else fits there better, and that thing fits somewhere else better. So slow down, don't take it so fast. Thank you.
Kenton Betcher, followed by Dorina Tan.
Good evening. My name is Kenton Betcher. I live in Lake Forest, and I think I may have a little perspective about slowing down. For the Whispering Hills Park site, my first introduction to that was in April 1986, when I spent more than my brand new car to get adjacent to a park that was coming. And the 550 homes in Whispering Hills at that time, when it was being built, and it was graded in 1985. My association started when I signed the contract in 86. And we all paid for that park through the developer. And that's when Melrose was coming along. But the county at that time didn't have the money, so it wasn't built. So fast forward 5 years, Whispering Hills is in litigation with the developer. I somehow ended up as the named plaintiff against the developer, and they decided that they wanted to do a shopping center by swapping that land out. And Ms. McCullough, before your city, and some of her other members, League of City, some organization in the South, took the county to task.
Saddleback Area Council.
Yes, and they took the county to task and took them to the mat. And I remember getting a call from the county going, there's some legal issues, we will not be touching Whispering Hills. I said, well, thank you. And we took the developer to task, and the judge gave us $8.6 million, including $2 million in legal fees. And they settled the day before we went to trial, and something about triple damages or something. Anyway, so I've been dealing with it in different capacities for 28 years. Fast forward to 1999, Whispering Hills, as our association, that was part of our common area because the IOD hadn't been accepted by the city from the county. We approached the city and said, the original intent was a community park. Would you accept this dedication? And I loved the conversation that we had about keeping promises. And our concern with our legal was, if we have them take our land as a park site, what's going to protect it in the future? And they said, well, we can't predict the future, but there's a thing called zoning laws, land use, and a little term called good faith, that we offer it in good faith, they accept it in good faith, and it will always be some form of a community park. At, I think it was 2001, 2002, sometimes the city, when an idea came in, would come to us, sometimes not. We introduced the thought of a community garden. It didn't go very far. Community gardens were very unique at that point, almost 15 years ago. And it just sort of died. Fast forward to 2 years ago, and suddenly we were hearing some things about planning, and our association had never fully endorsed anything. And we got a 5-0 vote from our board to endorse Community Garden Park, and we put it out in public, and here we are. It brings us today, 18 months later, we've gone through Parks and Recreation, and they've talked about dog park and even separate uses, and which didn't seem to work because of difficulties with raw food sources and dogs and those type of things. But anyway, what we're asking tonight is that the use for the site be designated as a community garden park, and we go forth with the planning as we go forward. And thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Dorina Tan.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name's Dorina Tan, and I live in Lake Forest. And I've spoken to you before in support of the Community Garden Park. I'm a member. I live in Lake Forest. I've lived here for 23 years. We're in great need for a community garden park. I'm a member of the Lake Forest Garden Club. We have approximately 120 plus members currently. We'd love to see something like that in our community. I understand the need for dog parks, but now that the idea of little neighborhood parks for the dogs would be more appropriate, I see this piece of land as big enough for a community garden park, something that we can give the citizens of Lake Forest a unique opportunity to grow their own fruits, vegetables, plants, whatever. There are a lot of people that live in apartments or condominiums that have no land to grow things for themselves. And we're hopeful that the Irvine Great Park will do something, but that doesn't seem to be on the docket, or it may be beyond my lifetime at least. I think Lake Forest has a great opportunity to do something special and make us stand out among all the cities in Orange County, to have some valuable land for its citizens. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
We've had no additional requests.
Okay, I'll bring it back to the council for questions or comments.
In on the RFP, would it be a community-based, or that they would be helping design the plan? So they're basically, whether it be the community garden people or the dog park people, coming in and working with staff and the contractor?
Yes, what they do is they hold community meetings and they have input, and everybody sits around and designs a park. We come up with some concepts, discuss those, refine that, take it to Park and Rec Commission, and then go from there.
So would they help design? Would the people help design the park?
Yes, they would help design the park, and we wouldn't have a predetermined use for it. We would just open it up for general discussion. People who are interested in a community garden would be welcome, dog park people, arena soccer people, and we'll come up with the design that we think amongst us is the best.
I like that. I'd make a motion that we accept the staff recommendation.
Councilwoman McCall.
I will second that motion with a comment. You named off 3 groups, also just park people that just wanted just a park. Okay.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Councilman Bass.
I have a couple of questions. What is the cost of the design consultant? Estimated cost?
I'd say typically in the neighborhood of about $50,000. I'm guessing, but for that size park, for a conceptual plan, probably I would imagine that this one's going to require more than a couple community input meetings to come to a consensus on what we do. Village Pond Park conceptual plan was about a $30,000 contract, so somewhere in that neighborhood.
Okay. Thank you. Another question is, I'm just wondering, this is for staff to consider, about including community input, since we're about to do a citizen survey, whether or not something like a use of this site could be included. Because that's just not to override the community design meetings, but as additional data and information as to what might be considered for that property. That's all.
All right. Any further comment on this item? Okay, so there's a motion and a second to accept the recommended action, which is to basically go out for RFP on design services. So, council members, seeing no further discussion, cast your votes on that. Okay, so that item passes unanimously. And Mr. Betcher, I know that you've been very active on the community gardens part, and I know that Mr. Gardner has been very active on the dog park part, and I would expect that you all will be out in full force, as well as any other groups, arena soccer, people that just want a passive park at that location. And I know that you all have been very active in the community, getting members of the community involved. I really appreciate that. I think that as much community involvement and participation that we can have is a good thing for all of us. So making sure that there's a good use for that park. So that park site, I should say. All right.
Thank you, Mayor.
You have a quick comment? Or?
I was just agreeing with you.
Okay,
I
great.
feel that one thing our city has always done is get a lot of community involvement and make sure that everybody has a voice, and may the better project win.
Great.
Hopefully, each time. Sometimes it doesn't.
Agenda item 23C, Village Pond Park Renovation Project, submitted by Director of Community Services.
Again, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'll defer to Mr. McGill on this item.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. The Village Pond Park renovation project is a complex project. It's got a lot of different moving pieces. One of them is updating the agreement with Lake Forest One Homeowners Association. So Dave Belmer has been responsible for leading those negotiations, and those are ongoing. One of the other things is resolving the issues related to the title, the title for the property, which were described in the staff report. We are at 24 homeowners that still needed to sign the grant deeds. We've got all but 6, so we're continuing to try to get the last few property owners to sign the new grant deeds. And then finally, we have the adoption of the master plan. So we hired a consultant, had some workshops, and the consultant is here tonight to show you the concept plans that were developed. And with that, I'll turn over the presentation. This is Tom Munoz. He's from Uvis, and he'll give you a brief update on what the process was and what the final conceptual plans are.
Thanks, Gary. Mr. Mayor, City Council, thank you for the opportunity to share with you tonight the brief, as I've been told, brief and summary of the design process for the potential renovation at Village Pond Park. The first slide you see before you is slide number 2. It's to your left, my right. Kind of shows you the overall park site as Google would have it, and it's all green with kind of a dark, like a black lake there, per se. But at the time we met, we had approximately 80 people participate in the overall design process, which Gary has talked about eloquently on other Whispering Hills and other projects too, which is start with a blank slate, take it from there, and gather the thoughts, the ideas, and the wishes and desires of the community. So at the time, we had 80 people show up, as I mentioned. We had 8 different tables, actually 11 different tables, with 8 people, 8 tables vying for a lake, a park with a lake, a pond, 2 tables with a park with a smaller pond, and 1 table isolated with a park without a pond. So they had all these ideas and thoughts and comments. At the time, they were able to vocalize and share their thoughts about the park itself, what's there now, what their desires were, or if they were afraid to talk about that in person, they were able to write it down. So this slide here to your left again shows about thoughts about keeping the pond. Down below it in the bright green talks about maintaining the park and potentially patrolling the park site, give it some higher clarity there. In red, you say you remove the pond, so people vocalize their thoughts about taking the park away, the pond away. And below it, too, in a bright orange or yellow fashion, it talks about the birds that are there now, the turtles that may be in the water, and also wildlife per se. And then again, they were able to vocalize that thought, or even in writing, or just out in the open. Next slide, please. Slide 3 here talks about, it shows you the amenity checklist that each person was able to write down their thoughts, either in a checkout format or even down below in a written format. So we took that information, and to the far right of the slide, we have a representation of what was a plan for the park site, and the blue is the lake itself, which people could see, and Respite Street at the bottom, and Ridge is at the top of that particular slide. All the different symbols you see in bright orange or purple or pink were all items that people want to see as an amenity, whether it be picnic tables. They might want to have a tennis court. They might want to have no grass. They might want to have a volleyball court. So those things were all interplaying in the overall design concept because that's what the thoughts were. Slide 4 shows you all the different research that we put into and data gathering from the resources we had available to us, either universities or people had written books about this particular issue, which is big. And Gary talked about geese and ducks that happen to be at the park site. Slide 5. This slide here to your left again shows you in blue the park with the improved pond, with the sketch down below, and the ultimate layout on top. To the right again, bright red, X through the design process, shows you a park with a smaller pond, which people really vocalized against that. And then to the far right of the slide, the park with no pond at all, which you see a slide representation in the upper right corner with a cross through that circle. And each itemized park has a keep the pond and add the following items: small fountain in the pond, play areas, variety of things like that. Picnic tables. To the right of that, the small pond, and add a dog park, a parking lot, community garden. The list went on and on. And the very far right hand talks about no pond and add the following items: play areas, a dog park. So all those different concepts were looked at. All the concepts were thought about. All those concepts were either kind of vocalized and shared with the group. The last slide shows you the final preliminary master plan, which is still at the conceptual level. And it's a bright color kind of item to show you the bright blue being blue, green being grass, or the circles being trees. In all cases, though, we took into account how to achieve, if we could, a reduced waterfall issue at the park site. So everything we gathered from the community, everything we gathered from our research and data that was open in open market internet, we were employed into this design here before you tonight. So, for example, more trees were available to reduce the amount of grass space that you have there. That does two things. One, reduces the flight pattern of ducks and geese. They have an ability to kind of run as they fly. And so we've reduced that by cutting the grass down, adding more trees, adding more picnic tables. So conversely, taking the grass out does two things. It saves water and adds a potential for educational purposes. You have a garden to the right-hand side of the slide that interprets native plant material usable in this particular park in this area. Also, a newer irrigation plant system, too. So at this time, if Gary has any more to add to the park project.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that we wanted to make an attractive park, but at the same time deal with the waterfowl. So there's a number of things that are also incorporated in this plan that are discourage the overpopulation of the waterfowl. The water fountains. Anything that you can do to disrupt the flight pattern. Right now it's an ideal environment for the birds. They fly around, they can see everything. The things that we're proposing make them uncomfortable. Those are some of the things that we've incorporated to discourage the waterfowl. So we kept that in mind, along with the need for the neighbors to have an aesthetically pleasing park, something that they'd be proud of, something that would also help us with our duck population. So, yeah, that's about it.
And to kind of finalize and summarize there, we added additional things like floating island to reduce the amount of the lake, face of the lake. Also, reduced turf, as I mentioned earlier, addition of trees, extra tables around the park site, and minimal edge of pavement around the actual lake itself, because right now you have bird poop all over the place, so that seems to be a convenient landing for them around the lake. That falls into the lake and makes that worse. And once again, that's basically it. So thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Do we have any questions with respect to just that report there? Seeing none, then we'll just go to public comment.
Jim Gardner, followed by Karen Shore.
Good evening once again. My name is still Jim Gardner. problem there is overpopulation. The current report and the plan are completely unresponsive to that. Water fountains, actually birds love water fountains. They're going to sprinkle and go in there, they're going to have a great time. Floating island, really? Birds are going to love a floating island. They use a floating island in order to protect themselves from predators. Meandering paths, they love meandering paths. Matter of fact, birds meander, that's what they do. They don't go on straight paths. Almost all the elements you see in this plan have got nothing to do with the bird overpopulation, which was the main problem with that park. Anytime you do this kind of research, you have a thing called a minimal data set. That's the information you need to use to do a good plan. I'm going to read you minimal data. Now, please raise your hands if you know the answer to any of these questions. I'll stop. How many ducks and geese are there on any given day? How does this vary by the time of the day? How about the season of the year? Do you know that one? Where do the ducks and geese come from? How many of them spend the night there? Or where do they come from otherwise? What path do they use coming in? Where do they land? Do they land on the pond or do they land on the land? How much room do they need to land? When they're landing on the pond, could they land between those two fountains? Any hands here? No? No hands? Okay. How many newborn geese and ducks are born in there? How many eggs are there? Who are the predators from there? What determines their circumlocation once they land? What percentage of the land do they use? How many eggs are laid? How many of them survive? What are the natural foods? What natural foods are available to them in the park? Any hands yet? I could go all night with these questions. No hands? You don't know the answers to any of those questions? How are you going to design a park whose major problem is its overpopulation of birds if you don't know the answer to those questions? Let me keep going. I'm sure you're going to put your hands up here sometimes. Now let's get down to some nitty-gritty stuff. How often are people feeding the birds? How much are they feeding? Oh, hey, 1 out of 25.
Every day.
Every day, okay, thank you.
Every day.
How much do they feed them?
Anything
Lots.
from small to way too much.
Okay.
Let's just let the commenter speak. And
He asked the question.
No, that's great. We got 2 out of 25. That's great. And that's 2. All right, there are 23 more that need to be answered before you can have an adequate plan. This is very pretty. Do we want a pretty park? Sure. But the problem, the issue was not to create a pretty park. The issue was to solve the problem of duck and geese overpopulation. You're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars and give us a pretty park, and what's going to happen? The birds and the ducks and the geese are going to PISS and SHIT all over the place because you only know 2 out of 25 answers. Thank you.
thank you.
Karen Shore.
Hello, City Council. I'm Karen Shore. I live on Respite, adjacent to the park here. I've spoken on this issue before. I just want to take this opportunity to thank you all for this process, and particularly you, Mr. Miguel, for the opportunity to be involved in the planning of this and working with the people from Nevis. I have been able to participate. I've been to all the meetings on it. I'm extremely pleased with the project, the way it's laid out here. I know that the research has been utilized on the mitigation of urban geese. It's not a new problem here. It's used throughout this country as well as other countries. And the reason I'm up here today is to ask if there's any barriers to this process, because we got an email from your office saying that you would be updating us regarding things like the update on the contractual obligations between the city and our association, which I live in, next to that park, and resolving title issues to the park property. My husband and I did participate in that title process, and we're glad you're narrowing it down to a few, but we're wondering if there's anything as citizens that we can do to help decrease these barriers, because we greatly look forward to having this aesthetic park. I've lived on Respite for 9 years, cannot go in this park. It's filthy. And so we're eager to get this project done. So if there's anything that we can do as citizens or as a part of the association, we'd like to know about that. Thank you.
We've had no further requests.
All right, and I'll bring it back to council, and any of those questions that you would like to respond to, I'll give to the staff, so.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm not sure we took extreme notes on all those questions, but I'll defer back to Mr. McGill. But fundamentally, what in the various conversations that we've had, we looked at habitat mitigation and modification in order to reduce the bird population. This council has looked at a variety of options in the past. We have discussed this with a number of experts in the field, and certainly our consultant has done that. Fundamentally, we have seen what the flight patterns and the landing patterns are, and reducing the amount of grass area was identified by the consultant clearly, I think, is an indication that they've done the research to understand that you want to modify the habitat in order to reduce as much as possible. But let's be clear, we're not going to totally eliminate the wildlife because you want a pond, and consequently they will be attracted to a pond. The idea is to try and reduce the numbers to the extent possible so that the park is more usable. Through modification of the habitat, we believe that makes good sense. Clearly, there is a great desire to move forward with this project that comes out of that neighborhood. In the event that there's additional steps that would need to be necessary, staff believes that we certainly could continue to monitor that. If the council wishes to delay the project, we certainly could do that. But fundamentally, we believe that it's ready to move forward to the next step. Our recommendation is that the council certainly approve the master plan, conceptually authorize us to go to final plans and specifications and modify the current year CIP so that we could put the dollars for design into that, and then you would be looking at construction dollars that would go into the CIP for fiscal years 15-16. You'd program that in towards the first part of that 2-year cycle, Mr. Mayor. So with that, we'd be glad to respond to any questions unless Mr. McGill or the consultant has additional to add.
The only thing I would add is that, yes, during the entire process, that was our goal, to reduce the number of waterfowl. So it wasn't just to create a pretty park. That was one of the goals. But the main goal is to use the best practices that are available to limit the waterfowl at the park. And
Councilwoman McCullough and I had the pleasure of attending 2 of them, the one that was actually at the park and then the one that was at Lake Forest One Homeowners Association. I know members of the Park and Recreation Commission were there too. That was really the main topic, and a lot of the things that are being addressed here, more trees, the water fountains, these were ideas that were brought up from the community, and they've been fully vetted by our staff as well as our consultant, and so I feel confident that this is going to improve that issue, but definitely won't go away. There are plenty of areas in town where I occasionally see those Canadian geese, so I blame Canada for everything. So that's an easy, safe thing for a politician to do in the U.S. So yeah, I've been very pleased with how this has been going. I know that at the first meeting that was at the park itself was the first time, I think, that was brought up this comment about some ownership of the park by some of the homeowners in the area. I know that that's been addressed, but maybe you can just address it. Do we feel like that's currently a barrier? I don't know if that's a city attorney question or...
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, probably is more of the city attorney's, I would say, purview, but I would suggest, from at least my perspective, it's not a barrier at this juncture. We feel confident that we'll be able to get to the end and make, if not entirely resolve that issue, it would be done sufficiently by which you could go ahead and feel confident in moving forward in your project. The other issue, as it relates to the negotiations with the Lake One Association, we believe, as we said in our report, that's made progress. It certainly is not complete, and we'll be updating the council with that. But again, in and of itself, it's not necessarily a barrier to the improvements of the park.
Okay, great. Any other questions or comments from council? Councilwoman McCullough?
I'm having a little throat
It's
problem,
okay.
but bear with me.
All right, I am too.
Yes, the mayor and I did attend a couple of the meetings. The very first meeting at the park was, it wasn't new to me because it's a park that my children and I used to love to go to. I don't include my husband because he was always overseas somewhere fighting for America. But, we used to go there. You can't go there and have a lunch now. And the geese will run you out of there. But the thing that was the most snatching at my heartstrings for me was I can remember the park before, and to try to get around the pawls, not just a little spurt here, but the pawls and pawls of Kakapupu. You could not barely find a way to walk without stepping in some. And this is supposed to be a park that children can go and see nature, and they can go and play in. And actually, before I left, in fact, one of the commissioners is here, Jim, and he was there with, we were talking afterwards about the circumstances, and there was actually a family that came with their children and let them run and slide in that grass that was full of bird poop. And also, as we were standing there, our husband and wife came with not little small portions, but huge garbage bags full of bread, throwing it out. Even while we were conducting the meetings, there were people coming with bags and boxes of bread, giving them out. There is multiple reasons why this beautiful pond that is now look and smell and have the condition that it is. I do not believe the city is God and can fix them all. And even what we have came up with to attempt to fix may not fix it all. But for me, I have went and observed other ponds, and we even have one here in our city where the water fountain, one of the things that was suggestion was the water moving. They don't land there. They don't. And if you go to Lake 2, and you see where the water is, you don't see all them geese and ducks there. So that one we do know works. Some of the other things that were suggested, I have went other places and checked, and some of those things that we have on this list will work. I'm not going to say that this list is foolproof because those Canadian geese are very aggressive in territory. They've left their home and they said, this is my new home. But I do know that the people had a chance to weigh in and give their comments. I know that the agency that we had hired, they have checked, because I rechecked them to make sure what they were telling us was right by going to other places and checking, and also going online. I'm very comfortable. I'm anxious for us to get started. I know we have 6 more signees that we need to get. I don't know how quick we can get those, but I had always watched it and passed by it regularly, but I was appalled when I had to attempt to walk through it. And when my knees and back is acting up, it's gone out of whack, I need my cane. There were times that I had a spot I could put this little tiny portion here, but I didn't have a spot I could put my foot. And there's even times some people had to come and help me to get around the piles. So earlier, you heard me pull, on our warrant list, you heard me pull a consent on the warrant list that we're paying that was $2,400, and you double it, you got $4,800. This is just one warrant list that we're paying, and that was only the water spread. I didn't see the vacuum part on there because we also have to vacuum this stuff up, because if it goes into our drainage, we're going to get fined. We need to do something about this park like before it got this bad. And for me, all these methods may not work, but it's better than not doing anything, letting it keep pile up. And Jim from our rec commission and I, that's sitting out there, we cringed when this family let the kid play in the grass where all these piles of stuff there. So this is contamination. This is something that needs to be taken care of. And as fast as we can get, there was a citizen from that association said, what could she do to help? As fast as we can get those 6 signatures signed and do something to get this mess cleaned up, I will vote yes. Please hurry up, because I'm really concerned about the caca-poo-poo all over everything. And some of these has got to work, because when I see a park right here in my city and the other cities that I've went to and seen some of these methods we are coming up with working, well, we can keep adding to it if this first layer don't work, but I do believe we can get some relief and get all that cleaned out of that park where it can be a park. It's a disgrace to call it a park right now, but that it can be a park. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, I want to thank the design. You guys did a great job, and the fact is your research, I think, is dead on. The areas that we have other water bodies, there's reasons why they don't congregate in the numbers they do here, because right now, as it stands, you said it's a perfect environment for a landing pad and a feeding place. Between that and Olivewood Elementary School, they have 2 different fields they can migrate from one to another. They're not migrating to Lake One in the great quantities they do to go to Olivewood, because Olivewood is another great big open grass area where they feel comfortable landing. So I'll make a motion that we ask for staff to go out to RFP, develop an RFP, and get it out. And I want to thank the community for coming out and helping with the design of this. And I think that would be a great addition back to our parks, to have this park that's a healthy park, because not only is this park unhealthy for the children, it's been shown to be unhealthy for the birds in the past, because they're getting plagues here because of all the overfeeding and the overcongregation and the excess waste that's going back into the pond. So the quicker we get this on, the better we are as a city and a community, and I think it's good for the wildlife. So my motion is that we direct staff for an RFP to be developed.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Just to clarify, that's to approve the conceptual plan, authorize staff to prepare the RFP, and then also direct staff to amend the capital improvement budget. Is that just as recommended there? Is that
Everything
correct?
that would get our park back.
Got it. Okay. Any further discussion on the item? Councilman Bass?
I was going to make that clarification that you are made, so I don't need to talk about that. But, this isn't the only park that has a pond in it. I think there's some parks in Irvine that have ponds in it, not big lakes. I'm talking about ponds. I think Heritage Hill might have it, or Heritage Park has it. And other parks, in Orange County have ponds or real small lakes, whatever you want to call it, that also they've been designed to minimize the bird problem that is experienced here. So I think that the design is well thought out, and it's not a mystery as to how to design it so it's attractive to people and unattractive to birds. That's it.
All right, so there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, council members, cast your votes. Letter C passes unanimously.
Agenda item 23D, off-leash dog park evaluation, submitted by Director of Community Services.
Again, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to defer to Mr. McGill. This is not a surprise.
Yeah, so let's just have the record indicate that Mayor Pro Tem Nick is recusing himself. Be ready to go.
If I could beg of you, Mr. Smith, please let everybody know why I am recusing myself.
Mr.
I didn't do anything wrong.
No, you just live in a house that's within 500 feet of the...
My residence is within a few hundred feet of this park, Normandale Park. As such, I'm choosing to not be part of the discussion, to avoid any appearance of impropriety. Thank you. Not to mention, I'm going to enjoy the cookies in the next room.
He's going to, too.
I'm telling.
Mayor, council members, at the direction of the City Council, the Parks and Rec Commission undertook the task of trying to identify a potential site for off-leash dog park in the city of Lake Forest. Over 7 months, they conducted an exhaustive study looking for a potential site. First of all, you've heard before, they developed criteria for a successful location. They also reviewed information regarding all the dog parks in the South County area. They evaluated city parks to determine the suitability for locating a dog park or a dog zone, a smaller dog park. They explored the possibility of locating on the 2 undeveloped city park sites that we've already identified, Whispering Hills and Normandale. They visited and rated 9 city parks that we felt had the most potential. We couldn't reach a consensus that any of those parks would be suitable for hosting either a dog zone or a dog park. They picked out Darren Park as the park with the most potential. We notified the residents. They came out in force. They were opposed to locating a dog zone in the existing park. The commission came to the conclusion that any existing park where you proposed a dog zone would run into opposition from the neighbors. So we're back to looking at the undeveloped park site, Whispering Hills and Normandale. They decided that based on the competing interests for Whispering Hills, their best option was Normandale Park. Normandale Park is about a 10-acre park off of Regency Lane, and there are no current plans for development on that park. That was the one that they felt has the most potential, so that is their recommendation. After 7 months of, let me tell you, exhaustive study, that park site holds the most potential in the city of Lake Forest to host an off-leash dog park. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Are there any questions with respect to the staff report? Okay, then we'll move on to public comment before we come back.
Jim Gardner.
And good evening again. My name is Jim Gardner. I live in Lake Forest. I just wanted to say, the Parks and Recreation Committee spent a lot of time and energy, but ultimately came up empty-handed. One of the problems they had is that, amongst many problems, but the major problem they had is they limited their search to city parks. There's lots of land in Lake Forest besides city parks. There's the non-park city land. There's county land, there's private land. So the fact that they came up empty-handed in city parks doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't other land out there that could be used. So completely in favor, Normandale is another option. On the other hand, and I know you didn't like my advice, and that's life, but if you did that system-wide analysis and you looked at all our needs, there might be a better thing for Normandale if you looked at everything that we need and all our resources and all the places we could put them. Maybe there are better places. So I'm certainly not opposed to looking at Normandale, but I don't think the PRC exhausted all the alternatives, and you might ask them to go back and look at some of those alternatives even as you consider Normandale. In addition, I don't think it would hurt if you decide to go ahead with a dog park committee, to throw that to them as well. There is plenty of non-park city land available that could have been considered. There's plenty of county land that could be considered, and there's plenty of private land that could be considered. So I don't think the search should have limited itself to city parks. And finally, I just wanted to say, I think Mayor Robinson, you implied that I was against a community garden. I've spoken here and at the Parks and Recreation Commission many times in favor of a community garden or dog parks or in other things. I'm more in favor of a systematic look and where things fit best in the puzzle, not particularly opposed to anything, much less a community garden. My name is Gardner, so why would I be opposed to a community garden? So I just wanted to correct that, and I wanted to say, throw it back to Parks and Recreation, ask them to look at some other options and see what they come up with, and ask them to work with the dog committee to further their goals. Thank you.
We've had no additional requests.
Okay. I'll bring it back to the council then for questions or discussion.
There is a sense of what to do. Could we send this out for an RFP to have community input? I mean, we were doing it for the Whispering Hills. I mean, we have 3 vending.
Mr. Members of the council, I guess I'll respond to that. You certainly could put an RFP out to engage the community to look specifically at Normandale Park, if that's your desire. If you're looking for an RFP to try and look at a dog park, I'm not sure that will be as promising in terms of an effort to try and lend itself to an RFP process for a consultant to do that for us. But clearly, if there's a direction from the council to try and scope an RFP along that line, we'll be glad to try to bring one back to you for that purpose. But if you're going to go to Normandale Park, then and you want to follow the same pattern and practice that you have this evening in the past, then it wouldn't be predetermined what the use would be at Normandale, but you would be, in fact, looking at all possible uses that could go there, just by way of history. Normandale Park has a proximity to Regency, and the reason that those sites were designated for neighborhood parks is because they were within the flight zone from El Toro, and so the developer couldn't build homes there, so they dedicated it for park sites, and consequently that's why you have Normandale and Regency Park that are bifurcated by Regency Lane itself. Ordinarily, you wouldn't find 2 neighborhood parks that are bisected by a street like that. It's always raised concerns in the community about the interaction between those 2 sites. There was a desire at one point when it was not quite as clear as where we might be able to have a sports park to look at trying to accomplish all of those things on Normandale. And just given the magnitude of the cost associated with development of Normandale and the dynamic, it was taking a bit longer, but fundamentally the airport closed and the reuse for the airport died, and so it was really, I think, an opportunity for the city because of the closure of El Toro and the death of the potential airport there. That you could rethink about where the sports park could be, and it landed where it is. And as we identified in the staff report, we put plans about Normandale on hold so that we could concentrate on the sports park. As the council knows, we only have so many members of staff here, and so that's been a huge multi-year project, about $80 million. And so it's not a surprise that Normandale hasn't been planned yet. It's certainly in the future, as identified in your current 5-year plan. I think, Councilmember Voights, you certainly have a good suggestion when the council is, in fact, ready to want to do something on Normandale. Then I think you'd want to engage a consultant to do that. And if you're ready now, we can certainly do it. But it would be a process I think would be pretty wide open, at least based on past practice.
And that we do want it wide open because we want the community to come out. And as the community was involved with the sports park, I think there's merit to that, and I think there's some merit to before we get too far along with either one of these projects to weigh what's the best use of these pieces of property we have. I mean, as we go out, I mean, there's still at the end of Ridge Route, which I think would be a great location for a same-size dog park on Ridge Route and down the end of the street there by the freeway to have it situated. But I think that these 2 properties that are before us now are vacant and unused, undeveloped. I think that we need to have the community come out for us.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to address the staff, City Manager. We have a citizen that is consistently has spoke of a lot of different other properties that are here. As you and I and even the citizen know that we have no jurisdiction over county property. But all the property that is here that are and over private property. But the property that is here within our city boundaries that belong to the city that hasn't been addressed on its use or how much acreage it is, could you please respond to that for me so that not only myself and others could be clear on just how much property we do have that is not park property that could be looked at, that is in our jurisdiction, because private-owned property, that's something we can't do with people's personal property, and county property we cannot. But there may even be a little piece of federal property in here, I don't know. But could you address that for me, please?
Certainly, Mr. Members of the Council, I'll do my best. Clearly, in terms of land that the city owns itself, those are parkways and median islands, and those don't lend themselves to that sort of facility, or parks. And we have a limited land availability that the city itself owns. There are a few vacant park sites, as we've been talking about this evening. There are a few yet outstanding IODs that are extremely challenged pieces of property, again, those that the developer did not want to build homes on. And so those have not been acted upon at this juncture, but they're very small, isolated pieces. Clearly, as identified in the staff report, the Parks and Recreation Commission focused on city-owned parks because I think the conclusion there was that the cost of land acquisition would be significant and add dramatically to the cost of a park plus its development. So, not speaking for them, Mr. McGill could better than I think they focused on what they thought was economically realistic within the time frame that they believed they had by which to perform to try and come back with the recommendations for you. The cost for land, depending on its zoning and its general land use designation, can certainly vary dramatically, but any privately owned property, unless someone was willing to donate it to the city, would add to the cost of the development and construction of the facility itself. Now, this evening, you took action on one in which the property would be donated to the city. We've experienced that in the past. The skate park, Etne Skate Park in Lake Forest, was land donated to the city by the Bank of America. The nature park, actually, is an interesting piece because it was originally owned by a private landowner, but the county owned a piece of property that was immediately adjacent, which the city acquired, and then we traded that for the land with a private property owner so that we could extend the green space along Serrano Creek, and consequently that's why the nature park is where it's at, but previously privately held, but a little creatively done in land swaps after we acquired the property from the county. The county only owns Whiting Ranch Park. The county flood control owns the driving range. The city owns the golf course. And, of course, they own Heritage Hill. I'm not aware that the county owns too many more pieces in the city itself. But fundamentally, opportunities with the county, they certainly have been good partners, and we've been able to negotiate things with them. Their desire to put a dog park in Whiting would seem to be contrary to their mission, but certainly if that's the council's desire, we'd always ask them. But fundamentally, the land availability is a challenge, and certainly would come at a cost.
Thank you, City Manager. Much of that I knew, but I'm quite sure many of our citizens didn't know that we're not sitting on that kind of availability of land. And by the time we purchased some land, if it was not donated, then we wouldn't have the money to create and maintain. So I would like for it to maybe be different, but due to the fact I'm a realist, I know that we don't have a lot of land. When we incorporated, we were classified as basically a built-out city, and even with us annexing Patola and Foothill, it still gives us some flexibility, and we've gotten all the new building coming on, but all that stuff belongs to other people. that we don't have a lot of availability. And in closing, just to make sure that not only I'm clear and that I'm not off track, but also so the citizens are clear, in those little parcels of lands that are not committed and that do belong to the city, beside the sidewalks, the streets, and the present parks that we have, and a few little others that you mentioned, could you give me some kind of idea on the smallest parcel that those little rimlets that cannot be used, and some of the, give me one or two restrictions like the sloping or any of that cannot be maintained beside going into the flood channel or an eroded area? And as far as Whiting's Ranch is concerned, you know, if the mountain lions ate up one of our citizens and tried to eat a second one and attacked her, and just here lately tried to, not too long ago, tried to eat up a young kid and its father, and the mother and daughter had to run to safety. I don't think we want dogs there. That would be like we're feeding the mountain lions if we had dogs there, or the people that's trying to take their dogs there to take. So to me, that's not even on our list. For me, I wouldn't see that would be safe or anything like that. But is there any little pieces of rimlets that you can think of that maybe I'm at midst of? You know, I have walked the length of the city and all through the bike trails and everything, and I know we have some floodplains and stuff, but we do have a lot of erosion on that area. But is there anything that you can think of that I have missed? Because I know I'm not perfect and I don't know them all. You may know something that I don't know.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Council, I
Brain dead.
not often do I know more than you would on this issue, but there's only a few additional IODs. My memory is not serving me well this evening to identify them.
IOD.
Particularly, it's an irrevocable offer of dedication, much like the city acquired Normandale Park as well as Whispering Hills. Those were dedicated by the developer as public facilities, and they were not conveyed at the time of the construction of the community, but would be held by homeowners association and then acquired by the city for public use once that was deemed to be the appropriate thing to do. The city council here a number of years ago decided that all of the park sites that had in fact been developed previously and those that were the potential to be developed a little more easily, then we would go ahead and accept those IODs, and we did that. For example, the Foothill Ranch Community Park was an IOD, so was the Borrego Park and the Overlook Borrego Park. The Normandale site as well as Whispering Hills were a little more easily developable into facilities. The other two remaining, and there's one off of Lake Cañada, which is a downslope, heavily wooded next to homes. It would be, and it's a very tiny piece. There's not even access to it. So I'm not sure how it even becomes developed as a park, but that's one of them. I can't remember. If I drove out there, I couldn't point it out to you. I'd have to have engineers go out and show me, well, where is this thing at actually? It's a pretty unusable piece of property. That's why it was offered up as a park site. But in any respect, that's probably the only one that comes to my mind immediately. Other than that, nothing's popping in my head at the moment.
Thank you so very much, and I really want to thank the rec commissioners, Parks and Rec commissioners, and Gary's whole department that I know you've put a lot of time in. And Mayor, I thank you for giving me the leverage to take and get some answers for myself and probably some of the citizens that didn't have the history and know that our limitations to its fullness. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. You know, we're very fortunate to have this one, and again, it is, I will grant that it's a very little piece of property to get something started. So, you know, I'm sure that if opportunities like that were to fall in our lap again, then, you know, we definitely would be looking at trying to see how we might be able to use those for whatever the use might be. You know, again, it brought up, you know, private property. What are we looking at just cost per acre right now? Just general ballpark numbers. If we were to go out and buy a private piece of land, I don't know if anyone has the answer to that right now, but
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, again, depends on the general plan amendment and the zoning. Some property that might be zoned residentially, I'd maybe defer to Mr. Bellmer because he's more familiar with some more recent numbers, but that's probably well north of $2 million an acre. If you're trying to take residential land. If it's commercial industrial, clearly less than that. There are a few sites that are around town. They're not very large that are probably of that nature that are available. I'm not sure, Mr. Bellmer, if you can shed light on the value of industrial property at this juncture. I'm not familiar quite at the moment.
Not much beyond what you said. The Radios acquisition was a great example of the variation in the value of industrial commercial property depending on the particular circumstance of the property. So it would be difficult to pinpoint exactly, but certainly within a range of $700,000 to potentially $1 million an acre. As the city manager said, residentially entitled property now, especially if it's entitled for multifamily residential, is trading at considerable cost per acre.
Okay, thank you very much. And any undeveloped land that may have been granted to the city in some way, is probably, it sounds like the likelihood is that it's right next to residential development, and it just couldn't be built upon. Is that a fair statement?
I'll ask the staff, actually, we'll identify those remaining IODs for you, but it's ostensibly the issue. Yes, they're like two little wings of property off of Kenyatta is what comes to my mind.
Yeah.
But please don't hold me to that. I want to make sure the staff
Sure.
Researches it so I'm not forgetting a piece or remembering incorrectly as to the exact location.
Okay. So from the private side, we're looking at, potentially, depending on the size, just this piece that we just approved tonight to build on would probably be maybe somewhere around $1 million. Could be $500,000, $1 million for that 21,000 square feet. Plus, you'd have to pay for a parking lot because you wouldn't just have, a street that you could vacate right next to it. So probably $1 million or more. And then, not a whole lot of city property. So then we go to talking about county property. I'm just trying to go through the list of what's been brought up. I know that on a number of occasions, there's been mention of this little parcel at the end of Ridge Route that initially I think the county was interested in putting a bridge across, and we've all fought that for a long, long time. So, but there's a big mound of dirt there, and so that property just keeps getting brought up. So
it's on the master plan of arterial highways, designated as a bridge overpass, and it would have restrictions as to what you could place on it.
Sure. Okay. And other county property, we're usually talking about next to creeks or something like that, or do we know of any?
They own some of the Serrano Creek, for example, in fee simple. And portions of it they have easements over. But Serrano Creek in and of itself, where they own their property, which would be on the, call it the eastern or the northern side of Tribuco there, above the SCE generation station there, is adjacent to homes. There's a number of private communities that are all along that creek. And again, the access it's non-existent except for the access road that the county uses for flood control purposes and the county trail itself, obviously. So even our nature park is fundamentally hampered by access. You know about that park. Clearly, while we negotiated for parking spaces and have access to parking spaces in the industrial development that's right above the park, and we built a staircase down to it, you fundamentally park on the street on Dimension, and then you walk into that park. That's because of the nature of where that's laid out, and that's very similar to the balance of the property that county might own, for example, right in the middle of Serrano Creek, and then using that for a dog park. I don't think you'd ever get that approved by anybody, but probably not by the Water Quality Control Board or Army Corps of Engineers or anyone else from that perspective. So it's pretty hampered, I guess, is the bottom line. And I don't think the county would turn Heritage Hill into a dog park. I'm not sure anyone would suggest that. And the driving range is that. It's a flood control facility, and it's owned by County Flood Control, not by the county as a general agency in and of itself. The city owns the golf course property itself, however.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I mean, a lot of stuff I already knew, but I just wanted to make sure that we were addressing those questions. It's been one of the challenges that we've had with this issue, and so it's sounds like Park and Rec Commission has suggested to us that we take a look at Normandale Park. Another question, not to belabor this item here, but with respect to Normandale Park, I mean, I know that we're just, I want to give everyone some realistic, understanding of what that might mean. So we're talking about, is it about 15 acres, am I right? Something.
I think it was close to 11 acres.
11?
But it's really challenged with slopes,
Yep.
and it would require extensive grading too. Okay. And it's also an odd-shaped piece. You could see in your packet that it's not entirely usable.
Okay.
As council's aware, it was an IOD from the Normandale Homeowners Association, so there's homes immediately adjacent to the one finger of that park, and of course it kind of widens out, but it is challenged by terrain. It chases up that slope pretty high, and would have, I'm not sure, I wouldn't want to speculate as to grading costs, but I'm certain the council recognizes the cost associated with grading the sports park, albeit that's not the same kind of acreage, but it would have some significant development costs associated with it. But it has certainly an opportunity as a neighborhood park and for any of the uses the council might want. In the long term, as I said before, we were thinking about it for different uses. We abandoned those in favor of the sports park. However, there is a synergy with the sports park. There's a trail system that comes out of the sports park and would drop down into Normandale Park. At one point in our thoughts about Normandale, there was also conversation about a bridge over Regency so it could connect up with Regency Park so that people could go from one to the other in a safe fashion. And so there's been conversations about that. The Normandale site in and of itself is challenging terrain, but clearly buildable. I think if we asked our engineers, they'd say, sure, we can. You want us to build something, we can make it happen for you. And I'm sure we could. So it depends on, I think, what the community desires, as Councilmember Voice is indicating, and your desire is when you want to move forward with Normandale, and if it's concurrent with Whispering Hills, great. We'll be glad to do that for you. If you want to hold on that, we can take council direction as you so desire.
Okay. My preference would be, clearly we want to deal with an issue that's important to a lot of residents. So, and we've been hearing it for a long time. And at times this room gets packed with people wanting to talk about dog parks, and at other times there's just a handful of people here. I don't think that's really a reflection of the numbers. It's just what people can come out and get to. I'm glad that we're able to put something forth tonight so that we can at least take a look at and try to address some of this. And I think that most of us have that feeling that we're addressing some of the issue. How much of it, I don't know. My preference would be that rather than going out with Whispering Hills and Normandale at the same time, that maybe we relook at this again 6 months from now, and then at that time talk about whether we're going to move forward with looking at something with respect to Normandale. I think that could also, maybe 6 months is the wrong, so I think I spoke too soon. What would be a realistic time for when we might see a dog park at this Baffin Bay location here? I mean, what's a...
I guess I'll defer to Mr. Belmer, but I do believe that we were looking somewhere within a year, but it could be 7 months, 8 months.
So.
In terms of looking at Normandale Park, I might suggest to the council that as I indicated very early in this very start of these 5 items, you'll be updating your 5-year plan, you'll be adopting a new 2-year CIP, all in fiscal year 15-16. It might be appropriate if you wanted to look at certainly, as you've indicated tonight, in direction moving forward on Whispering Hills, you could consider Normandale Park a little more closely as you start to develop a modification and update to your 5-year plan, when to program that in, and whether you'd want us to include that into the 2-year CIP. So I think it would be timely, as you council's more than aware, because we've said this and you've all said it for the years. You always want to look at what your priorities are and your resources. One of the fundamental things you try to do is match resources with objectives.
Sure.
And consequently, that's what your budgeting process is all about. That's why we do a 5-year plan, so you can look a little more strategically than just one-offs. And you hear us talking about the 5-year plan all the time because we think it's an important document. Certainly Normandale, Whispering, all of those were in there. And they are today. You could increase their priority, and you could do that in a much more strategic fashion when you update your new 5-year plan.
Okay. That seems to make sense to me. I mean, I think that we might start to get some potential data around that time about how many people are using the dog park. Is it just there's 10 or 15 dogs there all the time, and we're having to deal with problems with skirmishes between dogs and hearing about that, or do we find that that solves some of the issue? I mean, I'm a dog owner myself. We're on our 3rd rescue dog, and my wife has tried taking the dog to the Irvine Dog Park, and my dog just doesn't get along with other dogs. It doesn't matter how big the thing is. I mean, we've gone to Laguna Beach and Irvine and everywhere, so my dog just would probably love a dog park all to herself if it was like a 5-acre and she could just run around. So based on that and 9,000 licensed dogs and who knows how many more, we'd need at least 45,000 acres if they're all like my dog. So that part's not going to be realistic, clearly. But how we deal with this moving forward, again, I think that I know in the last election, Councilman Bass hasn't been through an election, but I think in the last election, maybe the last 2, there's just been a ton of people that were always talking about dog parks. So again, I'm glad that we're able to accomplish something tonight, recognizing that, it may be something small. Who knows? We might find that, it accomplishes more than we think, maybe less than we think. But looking at what all our options are, kind of running through that real quick, and I ran through it real quick. I know that the staff has spent an immense amount of time looking at the private side, the costs that would be involved, some of the challenges with county property, and then, what little property the city actually has and what we could use. I mean, I think that we've run through all of that. I know that the Park and Rec Commission essentially was tasked with looking at parks that we have, existing parks, and trying to work from that model. But, as we've clearly seen, you get competing factions. You get, the residents that live in that area who say, absolutely no way, I don't want it in my backyard, right? It's typical political speak, it's the NIMBYism that occurs there. And then, the overall community need, and how do we balance that? So, that seems to make the most sense to me, that we come back at the 15-16 budget cycle there. So that would be next May, March?
You'll be starting that process fundamentally in the just after the first of the year, so by the end of first quarter.
Okay.
In 15, and workshops later in the spring with adoption in the month of June.
Okay. So, I mean, that's what makes sense to me. Okay. So I'm not trying to speak for everyone else here, but that's what makes sense to me. And, again, at the same time, I mean, I think that if property falls in our lap, like this 21,000 square feet that did, and then having a vacated street there, I mean, if we have those kinds of opportunities, then we'll be looking at how we can use those and it best meets the needs in the community. So, I think that we can all stay on the lookout for that. If we can find anyone who wants to donate some property to the city that's not next to some houses. Just one last comment, and this has been brought up a few times about, a potential dog park committee. And, I think that typically government can slow things down because we have to go through processes, and it frustrates me. But there's nothing that stops, there's nothing that stops, Mr. Gardner from starting committee. Kenton Betcher, he's formed a great group of people to talk about community gardens. There's nothing stopping any of you from ever doing that, and coming to us as council members with ideas that you have, and then we can work from there. And believe me, I drive around this city all the time, for various reasons, trying to make sure that we're looking at all the how are all our street signs looking? How does the community look? How are the streets? What kind of traffic do we have in different areas? What kind of opportunities might there be? And I get the same ideas that other people have, and then I go and ask about a piece of property, and I find, well, here's the problem with that one. Here's the problem with that one. And it looks a lot easier when you're just doing it on your own. But committees can always form. There's nothing stopping a group of people to get together, try to come up with some ideas, and come talk to council members. That's what we're here for. We need to be accessible to each and every one of you. I think we all try to do that, and I've probably spoken for a long time, right? So I typically don't, but I just I know this is an important issue for the community. So with that, I think I'm going to stop.
I'll just make a brief comment. I know this has been well discussed and all that. Won't go over that, except with the parcel at the end of Ridge Route. I know it is owned by the county. It's for a future bridge that we all hope never happens. I doubt seriously the county would ever give it to us, but there could be a possibility that they grant a temporary use easement on it to build something that they would then tear down when they build the bridge over it. I don't know, but there is I think that there's enough desire to find solutions which may well be considered creative. I think some things were kind of suggested tonight about it. We had one that we approved tonight that was very creative and very cost-effective for the city. That's all I'll say. I'll spare everyone else.
Just a little thing,
McCullough.
just a little something on that bridge. They want to take and build a bridge across, but on the master plan, it's also scheduled to keep widening our freeway. If you remember, when I came here in '69, there was only the 101 highway, and they've taken land to widen it. Now they're putting 2 more lanes on. They're not going to go quite to that because they want to keep it open for the bridge. The widening is going to stop just short of right there where it comes across, because they want to do from Laguna Hills to this side. Where Laguna Hills, they built Furniture Row to keep them from coming over there, but that's because they own that property and we don't own this side of it. So that's why you see that the 2-lane widening that they're doing from Avery up to just shy of it, just right there where the Mickey D's is, McDonald's, where the McDonald's is, they're not going to go up to that. But if you could convince them to let you put a dog park there, that would also help. But that's why that wasn't ever developed or anything. The only problem you have, if you put a dog park there, you got to have parking there. So you would have to have some areas to park. Now, if you remember, we put that, we gave the parking permits to the housing tract there because of the timbers. But if you go by there, you'll see that there's still a lot of cars parked there, and even a couple of big trucks are parked there. So you may have a dog park there, but you're going to have the extra parking from the timbers there also.
Right. There are no easy solutions.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, as this relates to that piece of property, the city owns a easement over that portion of Ridge Route. It's for street and highway purposes. We don't believe it's owned by the county. We believe, as I understand, it's owned by the adjacent private property owners. As you know, oftentimes the streets are actually owned by the adjacent property owner in fee, and the city has an easement, which is really the circumstance that you have on Baffin Bay for tonight. So, and clearly, because of the bridge and going over the freeway, it involves Caltrans. It's a very challenged piece of property. That's why nothing's really fundamentally happened to it in the past. And street circulation elements that are important to general plans are all reliant, particularly on the other side of the freeway, reliant upon that bridge that someday being done. However, we've mitigated our traffic and over-mitigated in the absence of that bridge. But that's a very complicated matter that we'd be glad to share more with the council at some point if that was your desire to learn more about that property.
Well, with that said, I'll make a motion that we just, when we get to the CIP budget review next year, that we address this issue again. So I don't think we need more clarification than that, but I think we've talked about it ad nauseum, so at least I have.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Council members, cast your votes. Motion is to, next year when we're looking at capital improvement budget again, to bring this up.
So we'll just
tabling it until then.
Table it
Yes.
for now.
Item passes 4 with Mayor Pro Tem Nick having recused himself from the discussion. So I guess I spoke just a long time just so that he could eat a few more cookies. Okay.
I want you to.
Okay, we'll take a brief break here. So.
Agenda item 23E, potential additional capital improvement projects discussion, submitted by Director of Public Works, City Engineer.
Mr. Members of the council, I know Tom's been waiting all evening for this, so Tom, I'm going to turn this one over to you.
Thank you. I'll spare you my extensive PowerPoint presentation on this. Really, staff is seeking additional direction regarding some potential projects that over the last several months have been brought up by various members of the council or by staff. There's 3 projects in particular that we just wanted to, council had requested us to bring back for further discussion, and 1 staff-initiated project. It involves a split rail fencing on Rockfield at Larkwood, a mid-block crosswalk at Rue de Fortuna up in Foothill Ranch, and some additional catch basin screens because of some additional funding from OCTA that's available. So really the first project, and if you look at the attachment in your staff report, you probably best see the location. But a few years ago, the city completed projects, a median island project on Rockfield Boulevard. We, at that time, cut off the left turn access from Larkwood Lane on Rockfield, and that median island was put in. It's been suggested that we consider a potential split rail fence. There's on the second picture after that shows the existing split rail fence, which is holding up the signs for the one-way signs and stuff, and extending that to try to reduce the amount of potential pedestrians that cross at that location. Staff estimates that would be about 260 feet long and would cost between $40,000 and $50,000. It has obviously pros and cons, but we're bringing this back for further discussion. And really look for, and we can go through each one of these if you want to go through it one at a time. That's really your call, or we can go through all 3 and then come back for discussion.
Okay. Before we do that, we're hitting the 10:30 mark. I think that since we're almost done here, we need to take the vote that will continue, so I'll make the motion that we continue the meeting to finish this off.
Second.
Motion and a second. Council members, cast your votes. Okay, that passed unanimously. I'll leave it up to the council what your preference might be with respect to going through each of these items individually or just all together. So, any consensus?
I do it as unanimous consent. We do them all.
Okay, well, I mean, each one's going to require, there's a funding source and all that kind of stuff, so, we can let the staff report go through, but I think that we might need to take an individual vote on them, so.
And Mr. Members of the council, if your inclination is to approve the projects as discussed, then we'd come back with modifications to the current year CIP in order to get those projects underway, so you take an official action at that juncture.
Okay. All right, so if you just want to move forward with talking about each one of the projects, I think we can do that. And do we have any public comments, just so? Yeah.
We've had no requests.
Okay, all right.
Sure. The second project is a mid-block crosswalk enhancement. It would be for in-ground lighting at Rue de Fortuna. Again, there's a exhibit of where that potential location would be. We've received, over the last couple of years, we've actually received numerous requests for some sort of enhancement at that location. It's a mid-block crossing of a collector street. It's on a school route. There is a slight vertical curve, which does not enhance visibility of that crosswalk when you're driving up the hill. It shows the location of that. It does meet our current standards, but it does also meet state warrants for the installation of these types of traffic warning devices. I believe, again, this type of project is a good applicant for the State Active Transportation Program grant, the old Safe Route to Schools, which usually provides 100% funding if, again, you're eligible, or we are eligible, but if you actually receive it. So, again, staff's recommendation there would be that you'd authorize staff to submit an application for that. So we see if we're successful in the grant funding, and if not, we could bring it up again and talk about funding it through general funds or gas tax or other methods at another time. Again, council discretion on that, but I believe it's a good project to enhance safety in that location. Not that there's an issue at this current time. And then the last project is actually an existing project. This is an existing project in our CIP, but OCTA has added another round of funding availability. This project would install catch basin screens on about 70 catch basins throughout the city for only $5,000 in city funds, plus a maintenance commitment. We would receive about $100,000 in funding from OCTA for this project. So we want to take advantage of that additional call for projects, and we suggest that you authorize staff to move forward with that. Again, for all these projects, if the council votes in the affirmative to move forward with them, we'd bring it back to adjust the budget as necessary, depending on how you've guided us through all these CIP projects. And with that, we're available for any questions you may have.
Seeing there's no public comment, then we'll just bring it back to council for questions or comments.
The Rudy de what is it, Rudy Fortuta? That's the one that I brought forth from the Girl Scouts up there, and I actually went out there, and that is a significant problem for the crosswalk monitor there and the children that are crossing the street there, because the crosswalk lady herself was afraid to go out in the street, and I rolled back and forth probably 4 or 5 times with her, and that's something that do you think that the chances of getting that grant are good?
I'd like to think so. We should know in later this year if we receive it or not. We'll keep council informed.
Would the estimate cost of that be under 50,000 or around 50,000?
64,900.
Can we just go forward with that and wait for the grant to be received?
If you go forward, it usually precludes you from receiving the grant. So I would suggest that we move forward with the grant application process. In a few months, we should know, and then we can inform council at that time.
I like all three. Do you want to make separate motions for all three?
No, I think it's the pleasure of the council. Or
I'd like to make a motion, a staff recommendation on all three.
I'll second.
The CIPs.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion on these items?
Mr. Mayor, just a point of clarification, the recommended action is to give us direction, so if you want to approve the projects, our recommendation is you give us direction, and so I think you'd want to say you'd want to approve all 3 projects.
Okay. I'll start with the one I was on, then. I make a motion that we accept or go forward with the grant writing for the enlightened crosswalks.
I'll second it again.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Now it's up for discussion.
I have a substitute motion.
Okay, substitute motion from Councilman Bass.
Okay, that the capital improvement budget be amended to include split rail fencing on Rockville Larkwood in the amount of $50,000 from the general fund, to include the Rue de Fortuna crosswalk enhancement, and we'll just round that off to $65,000 to be funded with the State Active Transportation Program grant, and if that is turned down to staff, to bring it back for us for other consideration, and to also include in the CIP budget amendment the catch basin screen project, $100,000 coming from OCTA funds and $33,000 coming either from gas tax funds or general funds.
I'll second that wonderful.
Okay, so there's a substitute motion and a second. So,
Mayor and Council, that'll require an implementing resolution. The clerk brings to point, but that'll be the preliminary step to bring back the official enactments for you, if that's all right.
okay.
Excuse me, I need some clarity. Point of clarity. First of all, which one of those did you say was OTCA? Sound like we had it in reverse.
The catch basin screens is a OCTA grant.
Okay. And second of all, did you say a substitute motion or amendment to the motion?
Substitute motion.
I said substitute.
Just trying to make sure we keep it clean.
Any further discussion on the item?
Mr. Mayor, if I could, just for the record, when you look at Rue de Fortuna and where this crosswalk is placed, point being that it was designed originally by the Foothill Ranch Company, approved by the County of Orange, and we've described it somewhat as a mid-block crosswalk. It really is at an intersection, so to make that point very clear, it's at the intersection of Fascia and Rue de Fortuna, so it's not really a classic mid-block crosswalk, but it clearly is challenged because of the radius that's there and what we've seen. But I think just for the record to recognize that it's a challenged area that was originally approved by the county, but it does exist at an intersection.
Yeah, I think it's really a T intersection, so technically it would be a crosswalk at a T intersection rather than mid-block. It's unfortunate design, but it is what it is, and so I think it's really, as Bob Bennick pointed out, a T intersection there, and so we should refer to it as a T intersection crosswalk as opposed to mid-block.
Are we ready to vote?
Well,
Call for the vote?
hold on a second. So with respect to the fencing along Larkwood, I mean, do we have any feedback from the community? I know this is something that Councilwoman McCullough brought up, so, I know that it's coming from at least one person who lives in the general area, but I'm just wondering if we've had feedback from the community.
I'd have to defer to Mr. Wheeler if he's heard anything. I have personally not.
We have not. Certainly, we're looking for more direction, as this wasn't a project. I would just say a concern, and I know Catherine McCullough shares the same concern, is when we installed that median island, not all residents received it well with the restriction of that left turn. We have had incidents of some, vandalism of the trees and people driving over the median islands and things of that nature. So hopefully this will not experience the same results, but I would hate it to be viewed by the neighbors as separating the neighborhoods any more than we already have. Would be my only concern.
Mayor, for your benefit, or anyone without the knowledge concerning the area, is that precise strip there is walked with little kids more than any other area in our city, and little children trying to follow and keep up. And the railing that we put on Geronimo should have been put over there to help keep the children safe. We put the railing on Geronimo for one reason, but some railing should have been put there to keep the kids from stepping off and stepping into traffic, because Rockville is a busy street. And unfortunately, I was tied up with personal matters, and I didn't get a chance to get out and let them know that it was going to be on the agenda, as I'm quite sure they would have been here. Because one of the things is, when a mother has 5 or 6 kids and maybe babysitting a couple, and they're trying to walk to the store, because a lot of the people in that precise those 2 tracks right there, they don't have vehicles, or the father has the vehicle at work, so they walk back and forth up there to the 99-cent store, to CVS, and back and forth all around it consistently. That anytime you go by at certain times, I mean, you'll see lots of activity, more so than when you drive through any other part of our city. And that railing is to try to keep the children safe when that mother is trying to control and got sometime pregnant and got one holding on and a couple straggling or playing over there. That is, I feel, is going to be a safety factor for them. And that's why I've pushed for it so heavily.
Okay.
Because I've observed it on a regular basis.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your comments there. If I understand the motion correctly, the second item, Rue de Fortuna, is just to go after the grant funding, and if the grant funding isn't provided, that it comes back to us. Is that right? Okay. At this point, I don't feel comfortable with the supporting the railing, so I would like to try to bifurcate the issue in some way, so that I can support at least two of the items. I'm not sure that I'd be supportive if we have to spend $65,000 of our own money on the in light in the streets. But if we can get some grant funding, I can support that. Because we usually don't get money coming back to us. And the catch basin thing seems like a no-brainer to me. I mean, when someone's going to fund 95% of the cost, then you say, of course. When our expense would be pretty small. And that's no slight to Councilwoman McCullough. I just, at this point, I don't feel comfortable with supporting that particular issue. So, it's, I guess I will make another substitute motion that we bifurcate the issue and that we move forward with trying to get the grant funding on the Rue de Fortuna and accept what OCTA is offering. And
I second that.
so there's a motion and or substitute motion and a second on that item. So just to bifurcate, and then you can take up the other issue on your own. So any further discussion on that item? Okay, so then we'll, council members, cast your votes. That passes unanimously, and then now if you want to address that other issue, you can make a motion on the railing. So.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to attempt to find some grant funding for the railing or some kind of assisting on getting it. If you don't want to take it out, I'm willing to make it where we look for some grant funding if you don't want to take it out.
I can second that we look for some grant funding at this point rather than taking it out of her.
Make sure you're folding the children and start with SCAG. It should be able to fly through there. On the safety factor, school, that is a school route, safety school route. There's always some money out there. You just have to know which pot to look in.
So there's a motion and a second on finding some grant funding for that potential railing. So, council members, cast your votes. That passed unanimously. That brings to city manager.
Nothing for this evening, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. I forget what the order is here. Councilman Bass.
In light of the time, I'll be very quick and brief. I was at the Movie the Park in Baker Ranch. Great event. At least 3 great items that I saw there. There's some food and popcorn. A great movie, fun movie, and some of the movie characters even came to see that movie. And also there was a tremendous sunset. And then the other item is I would suggest that for the remaining months this summer, for council meetings, that we consider business casual as the appropriate attire.
Now, that's getting personal. I'm not willing to vote for that or support it. That's getting personal. You want to dress like that, you dress like that.
Okay. Councilwoman McCullough.
Thank you, Mayor. I attended the Orange County Fire Authority. There's nothing really for me to report on that. A lot of that is closed session, about 4, 5, 6 hours of closed session. Special needs assessment through OTCA. They are considering the OTCA is considering giving us some money for the senior bike program that I brought last time. That's throughout the whole county for seniors, and we're going to be going to the sheriff's department to see about the sheriff's volunteering to come and do some training, safety training for them before they get out on the road and hurt someone or themselves. But we're going City Hall, senior center by senior center. Also, attended the Lake of California City. They had election for new officers, and I was elected as member at large from our city. None of the rest of y'all came, so they just put my name in because we needed somebody from our city. Mental health. Mental health has some of the. There's a couple other things. I don't know if any of y'all have went to that celebrity soul food yet, but I've been about 6 times, and every time they are flooding that place. Last weekend, the line was all the way around, and they had to stop it. They were at their capacity 3 days in a row. They've had people coming from all over this state, but even out of state. Almost every time I've went in there, there's some kind of media there from some other place, not just Orange County. Mental health, I want to make sure I get get that into you. I brought everyone, take one of these, and take the slip. Let me use yours. They're going to have a walk in William R. Mason Park on the 27th of September. You may want to be on a team to help walk. And this walk it's a 5K walk to support families in need. They need help. NAMI is putting on this walk. They help the families to cope with the family members that has mental health and to end stigmas surrounding mental health. Some families and some culture believe hide it. If you have it, don't get it fixed, and where there is fixed. And also for the adults living with mental health. And that's what this walk is going to be, to help raise the awareness of the needs there. I do have something I need to throw out. The F&M Bank asked, is there anything the city can do to look into the big trucks that are parking there? They have an agreement with Mickey D's that they can park there on the site right across from Mickey D's on Boeing. And they can park to go in there to get their food, because the trucks, those big long trucks can't fit in that little lot easily. But they find some of those trucks are parking 6 to 8 hours, and the smallest amount of time is 4 hours. So they're going way past just going to Mickey D's and getting their food. They're beginning to make it a truck park. And when they stay like that and it gets commute time, it's hard for people to get in and out of the bank lot. Outside of that, thanks. Sorry we lasted so long. First to the staff and then to the citizens that were willing to wait. Thank you.
Councilman Voights?
Nothing further.
Mayor Pro Tem Nick?
I was doing just fine till a few minutes ago, till literally a couple of minutes ago. When my phone rings, I know what kind of a mode it's in. If it vibrates with 2 rings or 2 consecutive quick vibrations, that's a news alert or Amber Alert, something that is truly, truly urgent or newsworthy. Hardly ever doesn't. I don't know, maybe once every few months it vibrates like that. A 2-star general was shot dead in Afghanistan. He was training them so they could defend for themselves. He was teaching them how to fight. And one of the Afghan trainees opens fire. Doesn't make sense. I've been there. 1979, 1980. Back then, the Russians were trying to take control so that the distance to the Persian Gulf would be about 600 kilometers, which is vertically which is vertically the north end to south end of Pakistan, so that they would have access to the Persian Gulf. Because at that point, 80+% of oil crude oil was transferred through the Strait of Hormuz, which is itself, it's a couple of 100 kilometers from where I was born. I've been there. And these guys, if there is hell, it is there. It is just, they go to train people so that they can stand up for themselves. And they shoot my general dead, along with 8 other Americans and some other coalition forces. This is madness. I mean, Mrs. McCall early on in her invocation said to send a prayer for Israelis, and I'm all for that. But it's beyond that. What we don't see necessarily here is that in this most recent conflict, for every Israeli who has been despaired, 27 Palestinians have lost lives. That's a staggering ratio. So if we're going to pray for Israelis, we should equally pray for Palestinians. I pray for all. This is, and at the same time, it tells me the approval of the U.S. government, the federal government, is an all-time low. This is just madness. Seems like a bad situation is getting worse by the day. Thank you for listening. I don't know what it takes to help. I'm doing my part. Hopefully,
let me make a recommendation.
Hopefully, I'll get to Congress and make some changes in our foreign policy. But
let me make a recommendation for you, and I'll give you the opportunity here, and we'll finish out my time at council comments. But based on that, why don't we just adjourn the meeting in memory of this 2-star general and those who are victims of this senseless violence.
Amen. General Harold Green with an E at the end.
Okay, so your words, so we're adjourning.
In his memory.
We're adjourning based on
those of his colleagues and comrades. Thank you all.
And with that, I will adjourn the meeting.